Welcome to part 5 of What If Kushina Survived on the Night of the Nine Tails Attack Naruto x Hinata x Yugito. Please make sure to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more in the future, and as always link to the fanfiction is in the description. Chapter 41. Are you sure you want to do this? Tsunade asked quietly. Naruto nodded. Of course, I mean I have to know what he wants to tell me. Naruto chuckled dryly. Besides, how often do you get an invitation from a dead man? Tsunade shook her head. You have a very weird way of looking at things, Naruto. She nodded to Ibiki. Let's get this over with. Hi Hokage-sama. Ibiki pressed a button and the elevator doors shut. He pressed another and they began to move downward into the earth. The three of them were silent. Naruto had never been to ANBU headquarters before. The reason he was there now was certainly an unusual one. You might say he was there by invitation, just not one from the ANBU. He looked at the red signal lights as they flashed the different levels. The lights flashed until they came up on the very last one, B-5 sublevel 5, also called the hole. This was where the ANBU kept the absolute most dangerous prisoners. The elevator doors opened to a small barracks. 4 ANBU were standing at attention as he, Ibiki, and Tsunade stepped off. At the other end of the barracks was a thick steel door with a heavy lock. Next to the door was a large desk with 6 monitors mounted on the wall. On the desk was a single red button underneath a glass case. A man sat in the chair at the desk looking at the monitors. Naruto took a quick look. You don't have any guards patrolling the hall? He asked Ibiki, who shook his head. No, we don't want to risk a hostage situation. Ibiki nodded to the monitors. If we see any sign of trouble we press the button. The button's a general alarm. Naruto asked. No, it activates a contingency plan. Naruto waited but Ibiki didn't elaborate. All right, I give. What does the big red button do? Ibiki opened the armored door. It fills the hall and cells with cyanide gas, which is lethal within 5 seconds. Naruto paled a little. Good thing to know you won't use something like that with the Hokage down here. Ibiki and Tsunade both looked at him. Naruto got a bad feeling but decided not to say anything else. Once they entered the hall, the metal door was shut and locked behind them. Walking down the dark hall, they stopped at cell door 512. Taking out a key, Ibiki opened it up. Inside was a bare 10-foot by 10-foot room with a cot, a sink, and a toilet. And oh yeah, a prisoner bound tight in shackles and iron chains. He was sitting on the floor as leisurely as his circumstance would allow. He was actually smiling. Company, how lovely. You will excuse the mess, I hope. I'd have cleaned up if I had known you were coming. Naruto took one step into the cell. He looked relaxed but was ready to use a jutsu if the prisoner tried anything at all. You asked to talk to me. Well, here I am. He chuckled. Here you are, I am honored. If you are just wanting to joke, we will leave right now. Tsunade snapped. Unlike you, Naruto actually has things to do. You have been tried in absentia and condemned to death. You are a dead man awaiting execution. In a few hours you will be taken to your missed ANBU escort and begin the journey back to your home village. Ibiki reminded him. Kisame laughed. Yeah, I always wanted to see the village hidden in the mist again. But under different circumstances. They'll probably have my execution in the stadium and sell tickets to it. In any case, you only have a few hours until you depart. Ibiki said. Do you wish to use that time productively or waste it? He laughed a bit rudely this time. Oh, I'd love to put my time to a more productive use. Though I doubt the young ladies of this village would approve. Naruto sent him a disgusted look and turned to leave. What a waste of time. Have a good execution. Nice ring. Naruto froze. Slowly he turned back around. On the ring finger of his right hand he had a ring with the etched symbol of the vermilion bird. Thanks, Itachi didn't say anything when I took it. Spoils of battle, you know. Kisame chuckled. You really took his arm, didn't you? Yeah, I did, but I had plenty of help from my team. Kisame shook his head. Unless you had a Sannin helping you, it's still amazing. Kisame looked Naruto over carefully. Itachi thought you would be a very difficult opponent, me not so much. I guess he knew better. You've got guts, kid, and you've talent. If you didn't have the Kyuubi stuck inside you, we might try to recruit you. No thanks, I can't be Hokage if I'm a missing nin. Is that your goal, kid, to be Hokage? Naruto nodded carefully. My dream is to be the greatest Hokage my village has ever known. Well, that's too bad. Kisame smiled. Unless the lady standing there decides to retire early or croaks, I don't think you're going to get there. Watch your mouth, Tsunade said menacingly. Hey, I'm just trying to give the kid some good advice since he's earned my respect by facing down Itachi. He looked at Naruto again. The message I wanted to give you, kid, is really simple: have fun. Naruto stared back at him, wondering what sort of joke this was. Have fun. That's what I came all the way down here for. Kisame nodded. That's right. Eat candy, play with puppies, kiss girls, slaughter your enemies, you know, fun. Try and really enjoy life as much as you can. Since you don't have more than 3 years. Naruto frowned at the man bound up in chains. You know you're not in a very good position to make threats. Kisame laughed. Oh, I won't be the one who kills you. You'll outlive me for sure. But my organization is powerful and committed, and we will never let you go. So long as Akatsuki functions, you will be our prey, and we will hunt you down and take what is inside of you. You have 3 years, kid, at most, so enjoy what time you've got. Why 3 years? Naruto asked. Honestly, I have no freaking idea, I just know that there's a time limit and that's it. So a bunch of criminals want me dead. Naruto shrugged. Well, thanks for the warning. Naruto, Tsunade sounded worried. Don't take this lightly. We have a list of their members now thanks to our interrogations. They are all our S-rank missing nins, and their leader, this so-called Pain, sounds like he is Sannin level. Naruto looked at his godmother in surprise. Sannin, listen to her, kid. Pain recruited Itachi by beating him, and from what Itachi told me, it wasn't even a contest. This leader of yours was that much stronger than Itachi. Naruto looked and sounded just a little nervous. That's right, Kisame stated. And that's who will never let you go no matter what. Pain is the Akatsuki, and he is determined to have the 9 tails whatever the cost. I see, Naruto said calmly. It sounds like I'm going to have to kill this Pain, or else he is going to kill me. Kisame nodded. That's about what it comes down to. Naruto slowly nodded. Thank you, that's actually good information to have. Was there anything else? Nope, just make sure to enjoy yourself before the end. Naruto nodded and exited the cell. Ibiki shut and locked the door, and soon the 3 of them were walking up the hall again. You know, Naruto, if you'd like to take some time off of active duty, all you have to do is ask. Tsunade said quietly. But Naruto just shook his head. No way, I'm a Jonin, not a scared kid. I'm not going to run away and hide. Tsunade sighed. She hated it, but after the losses from the battle she really couldn't spare him. The village needed him. Sometimes she really hated being Hokage. They really didn't say much as they left ANBU headquarters. Tsunade had her worries and Naruto had his. I have to get stronger. XXXXXXXXXXX. He grunted in pain. Looking down at his bandaged arms, he seethed. Curse you, Third Lord, may you rot in hell. He glared up at the medic nin standing by his bedside. He was one of 2 other people in the room. It didn't work, you incompetent idiot. Why didn't it work? The medic paled beneath that hateful glare. My lord, the truth is I do not know why the procedure failed. By all rights, amputating the arms and replacing them should have healed the injury. But almost as soon as the new arms were attached, they began to blacken and deteriorate. I can see that. Orochimaru bellowed. What I want to know is how can this be repaired? The medic nin swallowed. My lord, I have no jutsu or medical procedure that could cure this malignancy. The only person who might possibly have a solution would be the great Tsunade. Orochimaru's neck extended and fangs came out. He tore out the man's throat, spraying him and the bed sheets in blood as the poor fellow collapsed and flailed about as he died. Fool, do you think I could go up to her and ask her for help? Orochimaru clamped down. Yelling at a corpse on the floor wouldn't do any good. He should yell at someone who was still alive. Karin, come here. Pale and nervous, she carefully stepped around the body to stand before her blood-splattered master. Yes, lord, I want you to repair my arms. Orochimaru demanded like a petulant child. Karin swallowed and tried not to notice that she was standing in a pool of warm blood. My lord, she spoke carefully and very politely. I am not a medic nin, I am a researcher and scientist. Perhaps if you were to recall Kabuto. Kabuto has his own mission to complete, besides he gave me the same advice as this fool. He also said that only Tsunade could possibly know of a way to heal me. Then my lord, why did you kill him just now? He gave her a look that made her feel the same sort of blind terror her test subjects felt. Because I am sick of hearing it cannot be done. I recently took this body and I cannot leave it for 3 years. I am not staying in this condition for years. You are my most brilliant research scientist. If a jutsu cannot help me, then I shall have to depend on science. He leaned forward in his bed and she could see rage in his eyes. Can you do it? If I say no, he'll kill me. She slowly nodded. It may be possible, Lord. But science requires data and experimentation, as you well know. Orochimaru frowned but did not snap at her. How much time would you need? How long can I ask for without him going crazy? 6 months, she said timidly. He frowned at her. I will give you 3. You can have 3 months to fix my arms. He gave her a sliver of a grin. If you do it, I'll give any reward you want, anything. But if you fail me, Karin, I'll make you scream and scream and scream. Do you understand? She nodded dumbly. I understand, Lord. Then go and get started, and send someone to clean up this mess. Orochimaru leaned back into his bed. Yes, Lord. She bowed and got out of the room as quick as she could. XXXXXXXXXXX. She walked down the hall looking calm and composed. Inside she was trying to hold down her sense of panic. There is no way I can heal his arms. I don't even know where to start. He's like the world's most lethal spoiled child. He wants what he wants, and if he doesn't get it, he kills you. She had absolutely no real loyalty to Orochimaru. She was no Kabuto. She loved science and the chance to create things never before seen. She had joined his organization for the chance to do some real research without any stupid morals or ethics to hamper her. Her time with Orochimaru had actually been a wonderful experience with many great things accomplished. But though she had willingly slaughtered hundreds of test subjects in her experiments, that didn't mean she was eager to die herself. I have 3 months to get myself out of this. I know I can't cure him. If I try and run, he'll send ninjas after me to kill me. So what the hell does that leave? She had a sharp mind. She swiftly came up with a third option. It was almost as dangerous as the other two, but she judged it her best alternative. It was her best chance to live more than 3 months. XXXXXXXXXXX. How does it feel? Kakuzu asked. Itachi carefully made a fist with his new arm. It feels just a little weak. That is normal, in a few days you won't be able to tell the difference. Itachi gave his fellow Akatsuki member a formal bow. You have my thanks. Kakuzu chuckled. I'll send you a bill. He half joked. What went wrong? Pain asked curiously. Naruto proved stronger than I expected. He was able to hold us off until help arrived. Pain frowned slightly. It's not like you to fail, Itachi. This is a temporary setback, nothing more. Itachi paused for a bit. Is the deadline still the same? Of course, Pain replied. That has never changed, even though the one tail is dead. Pain nodded sharply. The weapon can be reconfigured to use the chakra of the 8 remaining Biju. Everything remains within reach. Everything remains on schedule. We will succeed. He looked at Itachi coldly. You have failed your mission and even lost your ring. You will have only one more opportunity. May I choose when I make my final attempt? Itachi asked calmly. Pain nodded. So long as it is within the time limit. What of Kisame? Pain frowned. He was captured and revealed our secrets to the Leaf Nins. He is no longer a member of this organization. Itachi nodded. I see. XXXXXXXXXXX. Whack. Hero. Whack. Jonin. Whack. Demon of the Leaf. Whack. The one who took Itachi's arm off. Whack. The next Hokage. Whack. 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 Stop or I'll tell everyone you're abusing that poor tree. A girl's voice called to him. Panting, Sasuke stopped hitting the tree with his fist. His knuckles were bloody, but he hadn't noticed. He sent his cousin a hard look. What do you want? Shouldn't you be training with your precious sensei? I already did my training with my squad and an extra hour's worth with my dad. Your mom sent me to get you. It's time for dinner. Gabriella stated. I'm not hungry. He turned back to the tree. Oh come on, Sasuke. How will you be able to teach all these trees a lesson without a healthy meal? Sasuke turned around again and glared at his older cousin. Is all this a joke to you? If by all this, you mean that stick that's shoved all the way your ass, then yeah, it's a joke. What the hell is wrong with you? Ever since Itachi came back, you've been even more of a jerk than usual. Well, what do you expect? Sasuke barked at her. He came back here to go after Naruto, and Naruto actually beat him and took his arm. Sasuke clenched his fists in frustration. So, what? What do you mean so? Gabriella shook her head. Would you have been happier if he'd killed Naruto or captured him instead? Sasuke honestly didn't know. He hated Naruto and wanted to be the one to save the village from him. But if Itachi did it, the village would be saved, but wouldn't that make Itachi a hero? No, Sasuke finally said. But he killed our father and I should be the one to kill him and avenge your father. And if Itachi were in the village, he should have come after me instead. Oh, I see. I guess Naruto should have just lain down and waited for you to come to his rescue. Gabriella sent him a harsh look of her own. Get over it, Sasuke. Naruto is a powerful ninja. Deal with it already. You don't like him, I get that. But you're starting to go way past rivalry. I'm really starting to think you'd like to kill him. And she saw it. Just for a second, a look of bliss crossed his face. It was gone in an instant, but it had been there. Of course I wouldn't. He's a comrade. I'm just upset that he did something I wanted to. He suddenly gave her a little grin. Come on, I think I am hungry after all. Sure. Gabriella slowly nodded. XXXXXXXXXXX. Tsunade smiled at the 5 genin she had hand-selected to give some instruction to. They were all young and had talent. She was sure they would do very well. Her one regret was that her duties as Hokage would keep her from spending as much time with them as she would have liked. She saw 2 of them were having an animated discussion. Kabuto and Novel were best friends and would no doubt push each other to become excellent medic nins. Neji seemed relaxed and calm, ready to do his best. Beside him was Hinata, her apprentice and assistant. Hinata was already much further along than anyone else. She would actually help with teaching the others. If time allowed, she would give Hinata some one-on-one training later. And then there was her last selection. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Hokage-sama. Sakura said eagerly. Tsunade nodded. Well, a former student of mine recommended you for this. Uchiha Ichala isn't one for just handing out compliments, but she was raving about your skill level. So I just had to see for myself. Ichala-sensei said that. Sensei raved about me. Sakura sounded very happy. Knowing Ichala, Tsunade could understand why. She certainly did. Looking at the 5 of them, she was eager to get started. The door to the classroom opened and in charged Shizune. Lady Tsunade. We have just received this. She hurried over to the Hokage, waving a single sheet of paper about. Tsunade took the paper from her and read through it. She paled. She looked nervously over to her apprentice. Hinata. Yes, Hokage-sama. She answered. I have something I have to take care of. Could you take over the class? Hinata looked a bit nervous but nodded. Hi, Hokage-sama. Thank you, Hinata. She left the classroom to return to the tower. She glanced at the report again. Once more she found herself hating her duty as Hokage. Chapter 42. You look so pretty, Nisan. Alyssa said happily. Naruto managed a very weak smile. Growing up, he had always wanted siblings. Brothers and sisters to play with and hang out with. When he'd suddenly had Alyssa added to the family, he'd been very happy and welcomed his new Imouto with open arms. He was still very happy to have her in the family. It was kind of sweet the way she looked up to him and tried to get him to play with her. But he was discovering that having a little sister could have some drawbacks. Well, thank you, Alyssa-chan. But you know boys aren't supposed to be pretty. Though he said it gently, gloom filled her face. Does that mean you don't like it, Nisan? He smiled at her. Of course I like it, Alyssa-chan. He reached out and rubbed the top of her head. She blushed and her happy smile came back full force. I guess this is part of what an older brother does, humiliate myself to make my Imouto smile. I wonder if Kakashi Nisan ever felt that way playing with me when I was little. He had a sudden mental image of being 4 or so and riding Kakashi's back like he was a horse. Nah, I bet he enjoyed it as much as I did. Now for the pink ribbons. Alyssa said, excitedly. Naruto shut his eyes. He reminded himself that he was being a good Nisan and that self-image was probably overrated anyway. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kushina knocked on her son's door. Naruto-kun, can I come in? There was a pause. Only if you promise not to laugh. Naruto said. What? You can only come in if you promise not to laugh, Mom. All right, son, I promise. He had never asked for that before. Can I come in now? Sure, Mom. She opened the door and entered her son's room. Naruto-kun, the Hokage's office just called and they need. She stopped. She looked at the scene in front of her eyes. She slapped both hands over her mouth to keep from roaring out in laughter. Mom, you promised. Naruto sounded upset. Kasen. Alyssa chimed in. Doesn't Nisan look pretty? She nodded her head agreeing with both of them but kept her hands over her mouth. There sitting on the floor was her nearly 13-year-old son. He was a Jonin, a hero, and one of the most powerful ninjas in the village. Standing behind him was Alyssa proudly displaying her handiwork. Somehow she had managed to get Naruto's spiky blonde hair enough under control to braid it. Naruto had 6 braids, each with a pink ribbon at the end. Being ninja, Kushina had great self-control. She was finally able to take her hands away with a relatively straight face. Oh, I agree, Alyssa-chan, Naruto-kun is very pretty. Her lips twitched a bit but she didn't laugh. Alyssa looked very proud while Naruto sent his mom an unhappy look. I'm afraid I have to take him away from you right now. Naruto and I have been summoned to the tower. Alyssa frowned, upset that he was being taken from her. Naruto rubbed her head with a smile. Sorry Alyssa-chan, but I have to go. XXXXXXXXXXX. We never ever speak of this again, Naruto said as he and Kushina left. There was no time to undo his new hairstyle, so Naruto was using his Hitite to cover the top of his head with a wrap. Kushina gave him a wide smile. Let's go, honey. Naruto gave her a very worried look. Mom, I want you to promise you'll never mention this. She chuckled. Oh, I'll just bet you do. Moom. Naruto whined. XXXXXXXXXXX. Thank you for coming, Tsunade said solemnly. Kushina eyed her carefully. What's wrong? I have an A-rank retrieval mission for the two of you. Kushina raised an eyebrow. Just me and Naruto? Or do you mean just our 2 teams? I mean just you two. Tsunade took a deep breath. The request is from Uzumaki Seishu. Kushina's back stiffened. Uzumaki. Naruto sent a confused look to his mother and then to his Hokage. Kushina sent her son a smile. Naruto-kun, could you give the Hokage and me just a minute alone please? Kushina, Tsunade said unhappily. He has a right to know, he is an adult. Kushina wore a stern look. He has no reason to know about him. Mom, Hokage-sama, who is he? Naruto asked. Do you want to tell him or should I? Tsunade asked. Frowning, Kushina looked at her son. Technically he is my uncle. So technically he would be your grand-uncle Naruto-kun. I have a grand-uncle. Naruto said excitedly. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about him? You said I didn't have any relatives on either side of the family. It's complicated, Naruto. Naruto frowned and crossed his arms. What do you mean it's complicated? If he's family, why haven't you ever told me about him? Because he is not family, Naruto-kun. That's why I never mentioned him. She turned to Tsunade. You should have spoken to me about this in private. Whatever he wants, the answer is no. He made his choice a long time ago. Tsunade looked at her friend sadly and handed her the report. Please read this. Kushina took it and read. As she did so, her anger softened just a bit. I see, so he's dying. He's dying, Naruto said in surprise and sudden disappointment. Mom, we have to go see him then. No, Kushina said flatly and laid the report down on the desk. We are not going, and that is final. Naruto grabbed the report off the desk. Naruto, let him read it, Tsunade commanded. He can decide for himself if he wants to go. What? Kushina said sharply. Tsunade gave her old friend a neutral expression. She didn't speak to her as a friend or as Naruto's godmother. She spoke as Hokage. If you want to refuse this assignment, you have that right. This is not an S rank. But Naruto can accept it if he wishes to. You are not sending him out there alone. The mission request was very specific. Seishu asked that no one but the two of you be sent. And given the location, a small inconspicuous force would be best. Drawing the wrong sort of attention would be disastrous. Do you know how dangerous this will be? Kushina wanted to know. Why do you think I'm assigning it an A rank? Tsunade said. Naruto is a Jonin. As such, he would be expected to be able to handle some A ranks solo. Tsunade hated when her duties as Hokage went against her wishes as a friend and godmother. Whatever, Kushina thought this was a worthwhile mission. She couldn't sweep it under the rug simply because of Kushina's feelings or because of concern for Naruto's safety. What does he mean the retrieval object is the legacy of the Uzumaki clan? Naruto asked. Tsunade shrugged. I have no idea. I would presume it to be some heirloom, your mother likely knows. Kushina frowned. It's nothing of any great value. Certainly nothing worth the risk. Naruto looked at the Hokage. I'm taking the mission. Naruto. Kushina said sharply. I'm taking the mission, Mom. Naruto replied firmly. I want to meet him. And if he's really dying, then I have to do this. Tsunade nodded. It's a long way to Whirlpool country. Be ready to leave by 6 a.m. tomorrow. Naruto nodded. Hi Hokage-sama. Seeing that stubborn look on her son's features, she knew there was no changing his mind. All right Naruto, if you're determined to go, I'll come with you. XXXXXXXXXXX. That night they each made calls to let various people know they would be gone for a while, likely about 2 weeks. Alyssa was upset to learn her cousin and Nisan were going to be away for a while. She would be staying with Hyugas for that time. Haku offered to be responsible for her, but he was likely to be on missions as well. Their teams were not happy at the news. Gabriella and Hinata were especially displeased. But they could not really argue about an A-rank assignment from the Hokage. Once all the necessary calls and arrangements were made, Naruto had the chance to talk to his mom again. XXXXXXXXXXX. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me I had a relative? Kushina sighed. It was because I don't consider him to be family. You said that before, so why? What did he do? It's complicated, Naruto. He frowned. I have time, Mom, and I really want to know. Kushina let out a very long sigh. She'd hoped to avoid this somehow. I never told you what happened to Whirlpool country or to the Uzumaki clan. Naruto shook his head. All you ever said was that they were both gone. Kushina nodded. Whirlpool was a very small and poor country with the bad luck of being stuck between the lands of Earth and Waterfall. Whirlpool was basically a city-state centered on a ninja village on the coast. The weather was always wet and cold and the land was poor both in minerals and agriculture. And even though it was poor, the damn rock nins were forever threatening us. We raised sheep, fished, and provided ninjas, and somehow we managed. It was a hard land and we were a hard people. She smiled fondly for a bit. I loved it though, it was home. Naruto nodded and listened to every word. The Uzumakis were one of the founding clans of Whirlpool country. We were never rich, but we were respected for the high quality of our swordsmanship and ninja. For as long as there had been an Uzumaki clan, we had led the fight to protect and provide for our home by the sea. She sighed sadly. Then the Kyuubi came. The Kyuubi? Naruto said. The Kyuubi attacked the village hidden in the Whirlpool. She shook her head. Not directly, it never came near Whirlpool. But its power was such that every strike of its tail could flatten a mountain or make the earthy shake. When the Kyuubi came, the land was racked by natural disasters. Even lands the Kyuubi never visited suffered. A terrible earthquake struck the village and most of it fell into the sea. What little of it remained on the land was flattened and most of the people killed. In a single day the village and the country were gone. We were too few and too poor for there to be any chance of rebuilding. Most of the survivors left and the land of Earth simply added the territory to its own. While this was going on, I was here, of course, giving birth to you. The only member of my clan to survive was my uncle Seishu. The Kyuubi did that, Naruto said quietly. Naruto-kun, she kissed her son's cheek. There's no need for that look. You already know you are not the Kyuubi. He gave her an appreciative smile. I know, Mom, thanks. So why didn't you try to contact him? Her green eyes flashed. I did, she said flatly. I didn't learn what had happened until a couple weeks later. I had just recovered from the birthing, Tsunade and Shizune had gone, and feelings in the village were still running high. I could really have used my uncle's help, not just in protecting you but just for his support and company. It would have made things much easier for me to have had family here. I wrote to him and pleaded for him to come to Konoha. Naruto could see his mother's anger rising. So he never wrote back. Oh, he wrote back all right. Kushina said, voice coldly furious. He told me his duty was to remain in Whirlpool country and preserve the Uzumaki clan. He asked me to abandon Konoha and bring you to Whirlpool. Naruto thought about that. Why didn't you? What? Kushina stared at him in surprise. Naruto shrugged. Well, since so many people hated me, why didn't you leave? She shook her head. Because even if some people hated you, you were the son of Namikaze Minato. You were Minato's legacy, the heir and future leader of Namikaze. Your destiny was always here, son. And here I at least had Kakashi, Sarutobi, and the Hyugas, and occasionally Tsunade, Shizune, and Jiraiya. I had this mansion and the aid of the Hokage and the ANBU in protecting you. Against all that, my uncle wanted me to take you to a shack in the middle of an empty country infested with rock nins. If they had even suspected you were the Minato's son, they'd have sent an army out to kill or capture you. She gave Naruto a flat look. So tell me, son, which way should I have gone? Oh, you definitely made the right choice, Mom. So glad you agree. So you just wrote him the one time? Kushina shook her head. Son, I wrote him dozens of times. I sent him pictures of you and tried to convince him that his duty was to his living family members. But he felt his greater duty was to remain in Whirlpool to try and honor the clan's memory. Finally I gave up and stopped writing him. So far as I was concerned, he'd abandoned us and was no longer family. She looked at Naruto intently. That's who we're going to see, Naruto, a man who cared more about the dead than the living. Still want to go? Without hesitation he nodded. Yes, even if he did all that, I still want to meet him and get to know him if I can. Naruto paused. You forgave the people who hated me. Can't you forgive him too? Kushina planted her hands on her hips. Those people were strangers. Seishu was family. He had a duty not just to me but to you as well. He abandoned us, and for that I can never forgive him. Naruto sighed. I still want to meet him. Kushina shook her head, defeated. Then let's get some sleep. It's going to be a very long trip. Chapter 43. On her belly she crawled forward to the top of the hill. The thick grass provided her with good cover. It was just before dawn and the sky was beginning to lighten. Careful to avoid any sudden movements, she brought the binoculars to her eyes and looked out. About a couple miles away was a small rough-hewn fort. There was a wooden stockade around a few basic buildings. She saw a command post, a barracks, and what was probably an arsenal. From the size she estimated the garrison could not possibly have been more than 20. At the very center was a flagpole. In the gusting wind she could see the symbol of the village hidden in the rocks. This is it. They're occupying my whole country with just 20 ninjas in a wood fort. She wasn't sure if she was more relieved or insulted. She crawled away from the crest before standing again and meeting Naruto at the base of the hill. They had been traveling 5 days to get here. At her insistence they had picked up a change of clothes in Waterfall. They both wore spotted green and black cloaks along with greenish-brown pants and tunics. She had tied up her extremely long hair into a ponytail and stuffed it down the back of her cloak so no one could see it. Naruto had picked up a light brown rag which was tied around the top of his head to hide that distinctive blonde hair. Both their Hittites were hidden away now, though for different reasons. Leaf ninjas were not welcome in Earth territory, but there was an actual law that the Whirlpool insignia could not be displayed. The idea that she was forbidden to display her Hittite in her home country made her furious, but the mission required them to be anonymous. So for the duration of their time here they would pass themselves off as common mercenaries or bandits rather than as ninja. The information we got looks to be correct. There's one small fort here, Kushina said quietly. If the rest of the intel is accurate, they mostly patrol the border with Waterfall and don't bother much with the locals. Naruto looked a little surprised. That's good, isn't it? She nodded. Then why do you look like you swallowed a lemon? She chuckled dryly. Naruto, how would you feel if when we went back to Konoha you found a bunch of sound nins acting as though they owned the place? He tried to picture that image in his head. As soon as he did, he let out a low growl. She nodded. Let's stay vigilant. Just because they don't do it regularly doesn't mean they won't send a patrol inland. She took a deep breath. Now let's go. So we're finally going to meet Seishu. She nodded. We will, but there's something I need to see first. XXXXXXXXXX. It had never been even a third the size of Konoha. It had never been anything but a small walled village by the sea. As she looked about, it was hard to be sure what anything was. Nothing had been left standing, not even a single wall. She would look at a pile of rubble and think it might have been a friend's home or a favorite restaurant, but she could not be sure. She'd been told that the old village had been abandoned, that the few remaining survivors who had not left lived in a small settlement a few miles away. As they went they disturbed some rabbits and a few gulls. The grass was growing in what had been the streets and the yards. As they walked around the rubble, a light rain began to fall. She looked at her son who was walking close beside her. It rains here almost every single morning, she said a bit wistfully. She looked up at the gray sky and let the gentle rain wash her face. It's always cloudy too. If you have 30 clear days in a year, that's a lot. Gloomy, depressing place, she muttered. Naruto could see she was unhappy. Are you all right, Mom? She nodded. Just a lot of memories. They continued to walk slowly through the debris-filled street. Kushina let her eyes wander about. The destruction was so complete. What must it have been like? She wondered if any of her old friends had survived. She had written her uncle asking and he hadn't known of a single one. As they continued to walk, she spied an old broken doll lying half buried. It was just outside a pile of bricks that had been a home once. Was the child that doll belonged to buried there? She looked away knowing what the likely answer was. Thinking about a child's death, she couldn't help but remember the terrible night almost 13 long years. She remembered facing down the council and demanding that Naruto be returned to her. What would have happened if she had woken too late or somehow been unable to save him? She knew the answer to that. She would have committed seppuku. I couldn't have lived if I'd lost them both. She reached out and kissed his cheek. He gave her a surprised, but pleased, look. What was that for? She grinned. That was just because you are my son and I love you. He got up on his toes and she bent down a bit so he could kiss her cheek as well. I love you too, Mom. They kept walking as the rain picked up a bit. They walked until they forced to an abrupt halt. The water was lapping against the ruins. She could see the jagged line in the earth where a part of the village had simply dropped into the ocean. She went to the very edge and looked over. All she could see was the tide coming in and out. The water was dark and foamy and whatever was lying beneath the waves was deep enough to be hidden. She looked to Naruto and pointed northwestward. The Uzumaki clan house was there about a mile and a half that way. It wasn't a mansion, but it was a big house and we had a very big yard surrounding it. We even had a few trees. She chuckled. I know you can't imagine this, but there aren't many trees here, so they seemed really special to me growing up. Sort of seemed exotic and wild. Naruto stared at her. Trees exotic and wild. Were they giant deformed trees like in the Forest of Death? She laughed and shook her head. No, they were just some pine and maple trees, not even really very big. She looked back out at the ocean. It was a wonderful place to grow up, Naruto-kun. I had mother and father and my brothers Temjin and Urusai. I had uncles and aunts and cousins and my grandfather. I grew up surrounded by a huge family. She looked at him a bit sadly. I was always sorry that I couldn't give that to you. She looked out at the ocean again. We would go swimming and fishing and have picnics out in the fields. But the best thing, she turned to smile at him. The best thing was when Dad would tell us stories. When we were kids, he would come back from his missions and tell all of us a story. Me, my brothers, all my cousins, we would all gather around the fireplace and he would tell us one of these amazing tales. Sometimes it was about the mission he'd just completed. Sometimes it was about something a friend had done. Sometimes it was a story about one of our ancestors, but his stories were always amazing. Oh Naruto, her voice ached. You would have loved him, you would have loved all of them. Your grandparents, your uncles, your second cousins, all. The family you would have gotten to meet and know. All gone now, all gone now. She looked out at the ocean again. She was staring out as though she could still see it, and in a way she could. She remembered her older brother Urusai standing in the circle with that cocky grin of his, daring her to hit him just once with her wooden sword. She could remember standing in the kitchen with her mom learning how to cook. She could remember running around screaming as she played ninja with her brothers and cousins. She could remember falling asleep in front of the fire and her father gently picking her up and carrying her to her bed. She came out of her thoughts when she felt Naruto touch her arm. Mom, are you okay? She nodded quickly. I'm fine, Naruto-kun. She wiped her eyes. The rain gets in my eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry you lost everything. I didn't. She put her arms around him and embraced him. I lost a lot, but the most important thing I still have. She kissed his forehead and squeezed him as tight as she could. Let's go. XXXXXXXXXX. The settlement was about 3 miles west of the old village. Kushina was very careful to observe it undetected. Though she longed to go and see if there were any familiar faces, it was too dangerous. If someone recognized her and decided to go inform the rock nins, that would lead to serious trouble. Even using a henge, just the report of a couple strangers appearing might be a problem. From her cover she looked things over. It was depressing to think that this was what remained of a once proud nation. There were only about 24 structures, most of them were simple thatch huts with just a couple made of brick. They were just scattered about, there were no discernible streets or order. If there were even 200 people present, she'd have been amazed. Was this really all that was left of her country? Which one is his? Naruto whispered excitedly. None of them, she whispered back. We just came here to get our bearings. According to the report, he lives in his own home a couple miles west of here. Then what are we waiting for? She looked at him carefully. You're really eager to meet him, aren't you? He nodded. Of course. She sighed. I just hope you're not too disappointed. XXXXXXXXXXX. The rain had stopped. He stepped out of the hut and stretched his weary body until he heard some cracking. He would go and do some fishing, though he didn't really need to. He had plenty of food, but it was at least something to do. As he got his tackle box, he sensed people approaching. He put the tackle box down and put a hand on the handle of his katana. Standing just outside the entrance to his hut, he watched as two people approached. They were both wearing green and black camouflage-style cloaks. He felt a great fear and hope rise up in his chest, and the feeling seemed to double when he recognized Kushina. XXXXXXXXXXX. Mom, is that? She slowly nodded. That is your grand uncle Naruto. She said without enthusiasm. Come on, let's get this over with. She approached him with a slow, steady gait. He simply stood there calmly waiting for her. Naruto was a bit confused as to what to do. His impulse was to go up and give the man a hug, but he didn't know if that was the right thing to do. The man was obviously a good bit older than his mom, probably around Jiraiya's age. He had on a plain gray cloak with khaki-colored tunic and pants underneath. His face was serious and his green eyes seemed to jump from him to his mom and back again. He had a full head of mostly gray hair but with a slight fringe of red in it. On his hip he carried a katana and had pouches on his belt. He was standing outside a simple thatch hut like others he had seen in the settlement. His mom came to a halt about 2 paces from him and stood there. Naruto was very excited but decided to let the two of them talk first. The older man opened and closed his mouth a couple of times. Finally he took a deep breath and spoke. Hello Kushina. Uncle, she said flatly. He opened up his arms but she did not move an inch closer. He slowly lowered them. Still angry, I see. She nodded her head once. You might say that. He looked hopeful. Well, you can't be too angry since you did come. But she shook her head. I didn't want to come. I am here because Naruto would have come alone otherwise. Seishu turned his full attention to the young man standing to Kushina's right. Naruto, he opened his arms again. Would you like to give your old uncle a hug? Sure. Naruto immediately went forward and shared an embrace with him. Kushina frowned but did not say anything. After their hug, Seishu took a step back. Here, now let me look at you. He looked Naruto up and down and smiled. You really are the absolute spitting image of your father. Naruto grinned and rubbed the back of his head. Gee, thanks. It's so good to finally see you, Naruto. I have pictures of you as a baby but nothing else. Hearing a complaint, Kushina spoke sharply. And whose fault is that? If you really wanted to see him, you could have visited him any time you liked. Seishu looked at his niece and let out a deep sigh. I did not feel that I could leave Whirlpool, you know the reasons why. A little color filled her cheeks and her anger tipped the edges of her words. I know, you had to stay here to honor the memory of the clan. You were worried about the dead while your living family went ignored. You were right, he said quietly. I did stay here to honor our clan's memory, and perhaps I ignore the duty I had to you and your son in favor of the other. But I ask you to understand only that what I did with the best of intentions. Still, if I failed you and Naruto, then I humble and sincerely apologize to both of you. With that he gave each of them a deep bow. I ask you both to forgive me. At his words Naruto smiled and Kushina stiffened. That's all right, grand uncle. I forgive you, and I'm sure mom does too. Naruto. Her son jumped at the sharpness in her tone. Don't speak for me. She focused on her uncle. I don't forgive you, uncle. I lost my husband and except for a very few friends I was alone in a foreign land surrounded by people who hated and wanted to harm my son. I needed you. I needed my family there to help me. You refused. You made my burden that much heavier, and what was worse, you denied my son your wisdom and protection. If you think that can be forgotten or forgiven with a simple apology, you are very sadly mistaken. Mom, She shook her head. We're here on a mission to retrieve an item. Go ahead and give it to us so we can be on our way. But Mom, we just got here. Naruto argued. It doesn't matter. We're here for one reason only, to pick up an item and bring it back to Konoha. The sooner we get it, the sooner we can get back. Kushina, Seishu said in a firm voice. I understand if you are angry with me or even if you hate me. But I am still your son's only living relative. Surely you can just stay a few days to give him a chance to get to know me. She looked at him with open anger. If you really wanted to get to know my son, you could have visited him at any time. If he is a stranger to you, that is your own fault. Seishu nodded. I won't deny that. And if I could have the years back, I would do things differently. But I beg you, my brother's daughter, to allow me to do what I can with the time I have remaining. Kushina eyed him carefully. Her uncle had never been one to lie. He obviously looked far older than she remembered. And he did seem pale. I know some medical jutsus. Would you allow me to check your condition? He nodded immediately. Please do. She approached him and performed the diagnostic jutsu, then placed a single hand on his chest above his heart. One moment was enough to tell her all she needed. She pulled her hand back and looked at him. There was still anger there, but it was blunted by regret. I am sorry, uncle. He nodded. That's all right, I've known for a while now. He took a very deep breath. Kushina, I truly am sorry that I was not there for you when you needed me. But please understand that in my own way I did what I thought was right. He looked over at Naruto. Kushina, I beg you, let me have the chance to get to know your son before I die. Please allow me to do at least that much. Naruto looked at her. Mom, please. Let's stay for just a little while. She shut her eyes and let out a breath. One day. She opened her eyes and gave both of them a firm look. We will stay one day, uncle, and leave early tomorrow morning. Just a day. Mom, can't we? Please don't argue on my behalf, Naruto. He gave Kushina another bow. I am truly appreciative that I am allowed even that much time to try and set right what I can, with you and with your mother. He had a small grin. Are you hungry? A little. Kushina admitted. I'm starved. Naruto said. What is there to eat? Seishu smiled. I have plenty of salted cod fish, fresh rice, and fish sauce. Naruto blanched. Fish sauce. Yuck. Seishu looked at his grandnephew in surprise. Haven't you ever eaten rice with fish sauce before? Naruto shook his head energetically. No, definitely not, and I don't eat fish very often. Seishu looked at Kushina. You've never made him cod with rice and fish sauce. She actually looked just a bit embarrassed. Konoha's not by the ocean, you know. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto stayed away from the fish sauce while the two older ninjas poured it all over their rice. Nearly all the conversation over the meal was between Seishu and Naruto as they tried to make better than 12 years disappear and get to know each other. Naruto was eager to tell him about all his jutsus and how he had fought against the recent invasion. But what Seishu kept asking about was what it had been like for him growing up. He wanted to hear about Kakashi and Hinata and Shikamaru and Lee and Kiba. Kushina mostly ate in silence and listened to their conversation. Naruto took out a picture and handed it to him. Here. Seishu took it and looked at it with a smile. So this is Hinata. Yes, that's my beautiful Hinata-chan. He blushed a bit but sat up proudly. Seishu nodded and handed the picture back. Well, from what you say, I am sure she will make you a fine wife one day. Were you ever married, grand uncle? Naruto asked. For the first time since arriving, Kushina wore a look of sympathy. Naruto-kun, perhaps you shouldn't ask that. No, Seishu said mildly. It's all right. Reaching into a pocket, he pulled out a worn leather wallet. From the wallet he produced a picture and handed it to Naruto. Naruto recognized his grand uncle, though in the picture his hair was red with a little gray. Standing beside him was a beautiful dark-haired woman. In front of the two of them was a red-haired boy with a big grin and a Whirlpool Hitai around his forehead. That is a picture of my wife Nitsune and our son Daichi. That was taken just after he became a genin. He shut his eyes. That was a very happy day. We were both so very proud of him. He used to struggle some because he didn't have good chakra control. He used to be afraid it would keep him from becoming shinobi. But he worked very hard and I never had any doubts at all. Seishu took the picture back and looked at it. For a bit. He made me very proud. I remember Daichi. Kushina added. He had the absolute worst time with water walking. She looked at her uncle. Did he ever finally get it down? Seishu slowly shook his head. No, not really. But I'm sure he would have, if he'd had more time. He slowly and carefully put the picture back into his wallet. I wasn't here when it happened. I was out of the village on a minor mission. When I came back, he stopped for a while and neither Naruto nor Kushina knew what to say. He turned to Kushina. I wasn't here with them, and I just couldn't bring myself to leave. It would have felt like I was abandoning them. He shook his head. I suppose that doesn't sound like much of an excuse, does it? Kushina said nothing. Here, Seishu got up from the table. Since you've agreed to stay for the day, I may as well give it to you now. He went over to a placemat in the floor and pulled it aside. It revealed a dirt floor. With his hands he pushed back the dirt to expose a locked wooden door. He ran through a few hand signs and touched it. The door popped open. Reaching in, he pulled out 2 items. What are you getting? Having had his fill of salted cod and white rice, Naruto had gotten up from the table as well, as had his mom. The legacy of the Uzumaki clan and the payment for your mission. Seishu replied. Do you really have it? Kushina asked curiously. How could you have gotten it? I mean, it would have been sealed in the basement safe at the clan house. It was. Seishu said. I used the water-breathing jutsu to search for it. It took me over 2 tiers just to find the house. Then it took 7 more of digging, searching, and moving rubble. But I finally found it. Turning around, he held out a sheathed katana to Kushina. She took it from him and carefully pulled out the blade. She read the name etched into the blade. Uzumaki Hogosha. Naruto looked at her. Guardian of the Whirlpool. Kushina nodded. That was the name taken by the founder of the Uzumaki clan. Almost reverently she slid the sword back into its sheath. This katana is over 300 years old and represents all that the Uzumaki have stood for. Yes, Seishu said sadly. I had to recover it. I could not bear the thought of it being lost forever. He took the blade from Kushina and held it lovingly. This blade has come full circle. It was held in the hands of the man who created our clan and was the first Uzumaki. Now it rests in my hands as is fitting, for I am the last Uzumaki. Chapter 44. But Grand Uncle, Naruto said, you're not the last Uzumaki. Not with me and my mom here. Seishu smiled at him. You and your mother have Uzumaki blood and are family, but you are both of the Namikaze clan now. Naruto saw his point and slowly nodded. I'm sorry, Grand Uncle, I'd change my name, but. Seishu nodded, understanding. But you want to keep it to honor your father. He reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. You're a good boy, Naruto, and I know Minato would be very proud of you. Looking pleased, he rubbed the back of his head. Thanks, Uncle, Kushina said quietly. What exactly do you want me to do with the sword? Seishu let out a depressed sigh. When I am gone, you and Naruto will be the last people with Uzumaki blood. I simply ask you to take ownership of the blade. Display it, lock it away, or put it on a shelf if that is your will. But I ask you to take ownership of it. I will. I swear it. Thank you. Once again he handed it to her. Taking it, she carefully placed it within her backpack. With that done, he handed her a small leather sack. It jingled as he handed it over. And this is the payment for the mission. She looked at him with surprise. You plan on paying for an A rank with spare change? She wasn't upset. She would pay for the mission herself if she needed to. He had a small smile. Look inside. She opened up the pouch. With a slight gasp she reached in and pulled a few of them out. They glittered in the firelight. Gold coins. Uncle, where did you get these? From the basement safe, of course. Those coins weigh almost half a pound and are probably worth a good bit more than the 50,000 ryu I offered for the mission. She dropped the coins back into the pouch and tried to hand it back to him. Keep the coins, Uncle Seishu. She looked about the small hut. There was a table, chairs, a sleeping mat, a small bookcase with books, a couple small chests, and little more. You probably need it. I can pay for the mission easily. He looked at her and lifted an eyebrow. Is that concern for your old uncle? She frowned. Don't get the wrong idea. I just don't want to leave you destitute. Reaching into a coat pocket, he pulled out a rather thick wad of ryu notes. He opened them and fanned them out to show her they were mostly in 100 and 500 denominations. I'll manage. She looked at him questioningly. Some of this was also in the safe, and when I had to, I found work. What sort of work? Kushina asked suspiciously. I was an independent contractor. Seishu said. She frowned at him. Which is a fancy way of saying you were a mercenary selling your ninja skills. Seishu crossed his arms over his chest. Do not take that tone with me, young lady. I was destitute. My needs were few and I could provide my own food and shelter, but weapons, rope, clothing, tools, those things don't grow on trees. So when I needed to, I worked doing what I was best at. What else could I have done? Written to me and asked for a loan. An extremely unhappy look covered his face. Ask my niece for a handout. I'd sooner chop off my arm. Kushina glared at him and he glared right back. Naruto coughed and got their attention. So grand uncle, what kind of work did you do? Mostly simple body guarding and retrieval. I did accept a few assassinations, those paid better than anything else. Assassinations? And what sort of people did you assassinate? Kushina asked coldly. Criminals only. I refused to kill anyone who was not a criminal. He sent his niece a flat look. Can you say the same, Kushina? She flushed just a bit in embarrassment and anger. That was different. I was an ANBU carrying out the orders of our village. Well, I didn't have an ANBU or village to rely on. I did what I had to. You did what you wanted to. I did what I needed to in order to continue searching and find the things in that safe. Was there anything else in the safe? Naruto asked. He really wanted to lower the tension in the room. Seishu nodded. I was going to save them for later, but I'll show them to you now. He went back over to the trap door. I think you'll like them. Reaching down, he pulled out 3 thick scrolls. Are those jutsu scrolls? Naruto asked excitedly. Seishu nodded. Yes, these are all the family jutsus of the Uzumaki. He looked at his niece. These are yours if you want them. Though frowning at him, she slowly nodded. Thank you, uncle. Yes, I'll take them. Can I have a look at them? Naruto asked. Seishu looked at Kushina. At her nod, he handed the scrolls to Naruto. Naruto, you said you were a wind type, right? He nodded. That's right. I see. Seishu said. Well, just about all of those jutsus are water-based. You should still be able to learn and use them, but they won't be as powerful as your wind-based jutsus. That doesn't mean I won't ever be able to use them. Or any of these S-rank. S-rank. That's a bit ambitious. Do you actually know any S-rank jutsus? Naruto nodded. 1. The Divine Wind Technique. I'd love to learn another one. I see. Seishu looked discreetly over to Kushina. Despite their differences, Seishu recognized that Kushina was the one responsible for him and he would not challenge her authority. She hesitated but finally gave him a slight nod. Well, there is one, but it's extremely difficult to master, and since you're not a water type, it will be especially hard for you. Can you show me? Seishu took the correct scroll and opened it. He rolled it out and rolled it out until he got near the end. There it is. To his dismay, Naruto saw it was an extremely complex jutsu. But it looked very interesting. Summoning of the Kraken. What's a Kraken? Seishu grinned. A sea monster. Naruto's eyes expanded. Cool. Do I have to sign a contract like with frogs? Seishu shook his head. No, the Kraken isn't an animal summons. Rather, it's a beast from another dimension, so no contract is needed. But there are 3 conditions to summon it once you master the jutsu. 1. You will need to use some of your blood. 2. It demands an awful lot of chakra. And 3. You can only summon it when you're on the ocean. Naruto looked only slightly let down. If he could only use it on the ocean, he wouldn't get the chance to try it very often. But he was still eager to learn it. Will you help me learn it, grand uncle? Sadly, Seishu shook his head. I'm afraid neither I nor your mother knows this jutsu. You're on your own. Naruto nodded. Not the first time. Seishu looked at Kushina. Besides the Ryu notes and a few papers, there was one other thing in that safe that I know you will like. He went over and took out an extremely thick book with a white plastic cover. The second Kushina spotted it, she rushed over to him. Is that? Seishu nodded. It is your mother's photo album. She gladly took it from him and opened it. Oh, it is. Naruto, come here. As soon as he was at her side, she pointed to a picture of a young couple sitting on a couch with 2 small boys and with a baby held in the woman's arms. That is my father, my mother, and my brothers Temjin and Urusai. Wow. That is so cool, Mom. Kushina looked at her uncle. Uncle Seishu, thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't have any photos with me and I didn't think I would ever get to see their images again. He smiled at her. You're very welcome, niece. I'm very glad if I'm able to give you at least a little something to help make up for my failing you and Naruto. She set down the book and to his surprise she put her arms around him and hugged him. Uncle, you have no idea how happy it makes me just to see their faces again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He gladly returned her embrace. Does this mean I am forgiven? He asked quietly. She looked at him, and slowly she nodded her head. I forgive you, uncle. And I am sorry that I was angry at you. I just wanted my family with me. He nodded. I understand and I don't blame you. I am truly sorry that I was such a fool and waited so long to finally see the two of you. Naruto looked on smiling as the two of them continued to embrace for a while and to forgive each other. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kushina remained in the hut wanting to look at the pictures and remember. In the meanwhile, Seishu took Naruto to a rowboat to go out and do some fishing. Kushina was happy that they were going to do the male bonding thing. XXXXXXXXXXX. So you've never gone fishing? Seishu said, not believing. Naruto shrugged. Nope. Seishu shook his head. Naruto, I know you don't live by the ocean, but there are lakes and streams in Fire Country, aren't there? Well, of course, but fishing just never came up. Well, that's just sad. It's a wonderful way to spend an afternoon and I can't believe your mother never took you. Well, we don't really do things outside the estates. When I was growing it up it was just too dangerous. Seishu looked at him. Why exactly? Your mother wrote to me that people hated you and wanted to hurt you. I didn't want to believe it as I couldn't imagine them feeling that way towards Minato's newborn son. But if you say it then it must be true. Naruto stared at him. You don't know. Seishu shook his head. No, do you? When he stopped to think about it he supposed it made sense. They had contacted each other by letter, there was no way mom would have written down that information and sent it out. Even if she had it would have been a violation of the Sandame's law. Naruto took a deep breath. This wasn't something he enjoyed sharing, but he wanted his grand uncle to know the truth. Yeah, I do. You know that my father died stopping the Kyuubi. Seishu nodded sadly. Well, he couldn't kill it. The only way to stop it was to trap it in a human container, me. I'm a demon vessel and I hold the Kyuubi inside of me. Seishu stared at him. I see, and people blamed you for what the Kyuubi did. Naruto nodded. That's why I almost never left home before entering the academy and why mom had so few friends. Seishu nodded. He set down his fishing rod and hugged the boy. Naruto, I am so sorry. I had no idea. That's all right. I should have been here to help. He shook his head sadly. Naruto gave him a big smile. It's all right, grand uncle, at least I finally got the chance to know you. At that moment the rod jerked and was nearly pulled out of his hands. Gah! Seishu laughed. You got one. Reel him in, reel him in. Being inexperienced he helped as Naruto pulled in a decent-sized fish. He also got a good laugh as his nephew the Jonin screamed like a little girl as the fish flapped about on his lap. It was easily the most fun he'd had fishing since before the earthquake. XXXXXXXXXX. After a few productive hours they rowed the boat back with a bucket full of fresh fish. On the beach he demonstrated for Naruto the proper method of cleaning fish and tossed the scrap into the ocean. When they returned to his hut Kushina was still sitting by the fireplace looking at pictures. She looked up at them. You back already? It's been about 4 hours, mom. Checking her watch she was surprised to see that it had been that long. Well, did you enjoy fishing? To his own surprise Naruto nodded. Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. He looked to Seishu. I wish we could do it again. Seishu smiled sadly. So do I. Kushina nodded. You can, she said quietly and closed the book. Naruto grinned. Does that mean we can stay a while longer? No, this place is too dangerous now. But, she looked to her uncle. You could come home with us, uncle. Naruto turned an excited grin to him, only to find the man looking downcast. What's wrong? You said you were sorry you didn't get to spend time with us, don't you want to now? Naruto, Kushina, I am dying. I don't know how much time I have but it certainly isn't very long. Kushina stood up and came over to him. So you'd rather die here all alone than in the company of those who love you? He looked embarrassed. The truth is, I'm getting weaker as time passes and I don't want to be a burden. Kushina reached out and took his hands. Uncle, you would never be that. Naruto and I would love to have you with us. Please, Uncle Seishu, we've lost so much time already. Let's not lose what time remains. You said you wanted to get to know Naruto, well here's your chance. And I would love to have you there as well. Please come with us, uncle. Please, Grand Uncle. Naruto said eagerly. Don't you want to meet Hinata and Alyssa and Haku and Kiba and everyone else? I really want you there, so please come back with us. Listening to their appeals, his heart ached. And the truth was, he wanted to stay with them, he didn't want to be alone anymore. He slowly nodded. All right, I'll come with you. He was immediately embraced by both of them. Wonderful, Kushina stated. Great, Naruto sighed. You should know though, that I will slow you down to a walk. I can't move fast over long distances anymore. He had a lot of pride and hated having to expose his weaknesses. Naruto grinned. That's no problem. I'll make some shadow clones to carry you. Seishu shook his head at the thought that he would need Naruto's help just to get there. Still, he looked forward to finally being with them. All right, let's have some fresh fish, and then I need to pack a few things. XXXXXXXXXXX. Before the dawn, Kushina and Naruto waited outside the hut. They had their cloaks and backpacks, and Naruto had already created a couple of shadow clones to help his uncle. When his uncle came out, he had a torch. He touched it to the hut and let it begin to burn. What are you doing? Naruto asked. I will never return here, and this is a way to say a final goodbye. He tossed the torch into the hut. He had on a simple gray cloak and backpack. The rest of his clothing matched. He looked at the sea and the grassy fields of his homeland. Goodbye. Ready to go? Kushina asked gently. Seishu nodded. Yes, I think I am. With that, Naruto's clones took a careful hold of him and they began the long journey back to Konoha. Chapter 45. He was lying in his cage and enjoying the ride. He figured he was halfway there. He smiled, trying to imagine the sort of reception he would get. He was sure the whole village would turn out just to see little old him. Well, he did like attention. He idly wondered exactly how they would end up executing him. Beheading was the normal method. He laughed to himself. Nah, way too boring. He was sure they would go with burning at the stake or being torn apart by live animals. Bet they go with burning me, it's more colorful and takes longer. The Mizukage would want to make a real show of it. He would want everyone to see the fate of those who turned on him. Kisame couldn't blame him. If things had worked out just a little differently, the Mizukage would have ended up shaved into a pile of chum. Kisame looked at his surroundings. He was sitting in an iron cage locked inside an iron wagon. He was completely bound up in iron chains with about 50 chakra suppression seals stuck to him. And the ANBU had informed him that if they even sensed him somehow molding chakra, they would activate the 100 explosive tags on the wagon, and that would be that. Kisame would have preferred that. Not only would that be a quick, clean death, it would piss off the Mizukage to no end. Since there was no way he could activate any of his chakra, he decided to relax and take a nap. He didn't know how long it had been that he'd been asleep. He noticed immediately that the wagon had stopped moving. That was odd, as from a couple small slits there was still sunlight entering the wagon. The last couple days they had been moving from before sunrise until after sunset. He was wondering why the break in routine. Then he felt the familiar chakra signature. Well, this is going to be interesting. I wonder if he's here to kill me or free me. Kisame laughed as the iron doors of the wagons were pulled open. Well, the Mizukage is going to be royally pissed either way. Into the wagon stepped a figure wearing a black cloak and red clouds. Hello, Itachi, he said in a cheery voice. Hello, Kisame. Itachi replied in his usual polite and unemotional way. So what brings you by? You here to kill me? Itachi shook his head slightly. No, our leader has chosen to simply remove you from our membership. The Akatsuki has no further interest in you. Kisame couldn't help it, he laughed. Ah, does that mean you came here to save me out of friendship? I am both touched and surprised. I didn't think you had it in you. Itachi lifted a single eyebrow. Friendship? No, I am here because you are an extremely powerful ninja who has still not reached his full potential. To let you simply be executed would be a waste, therefore I am freeing you. Just like that. You don't want anything in return. Itachi considered for a moment. The Akatsuki would likely object were I to continue to work with you, though they will not seek you out if you simply go. While I have no request of you at this time, you may consider yourself to be in my debt. Should I need your help in the future? Kisame nodded happily. I am yours. Now get me out of here. He let out a sigh. I don't suppose you'd know what became of my sword. Itachi nodded. It was included in the cargo. Though not your ring, that likely remains in Konoha. Kisame nodded. No problem, it's not like I have a use for it anymore. He smiled. You know Naruto has your ring now. Does he? Itachi sounded uninterested as he unlocked the cage. Doesn't the thought of him wearing the ring he took off your severed arm piss you off? No, he answered simply. I am relieved to know that when I defeat him I will at the same time recover what is mine. Oh yeah, when's that going to happen? Not for some time, there is no reason to rush and I think I will further develop my strength before I face him again. Kisame stared at him as he began releasing the locks on his chains. Is that eagerness in your voice? Itachi said nothing more as he freed his former partner. XXXXXXXXXXX. He felt the power surging through him. It was magnificent. He felt like he could do anything. He smiled at the 6 remaining bandits. There had been 50 of them. Now these 6 were all that was left. They tossed down their swords and dropped to their knees pleading for him to spare their lives. Pathetic. They weren't ninja of course, but still men should face their deaths with at least a little honor even if they were criminals. If you want to live, tell me where your leader is. Where is Ikuchi? They all began to wail they didn't know. The ninja grinned at them and they knew they were about to die. He might be in the cave. One of them offered. What cave? There is a cave about 3 miles from here where we would hide some of our loot. When we wanted to avoid patrols we would stay there sometimes. I see, and you're sure that Ikuchi will be there? The ninja asked. The man shook his head. No, but he might be there. Especially if he is trying to hide from you. The ninja thought about it for a moment. Well, it's at least a place to start. Will you let us live then? The ninja smiled and the men tried to get to their feet as he performed hand signs. No, Doragon Kusai no Jutsu. Dragon fire. He opened his mouth and out poured a massive stream of fire. The men never had a chance as they were engulfed by the blaze. The one mercy was that the fire was so hot their cries were quickly cut off as they died almost instantly. The ninja looked at the blaze and the charred remains and felt good. He looked down at his hands with their black marks and laughed. He had never felt more alive before. Uchiha Sasuke felt truly wonderful. XXXXXXXXXX. Damn it, Sasuke. Kurenai muttered beneath her breath. They had beaten the bandits with ease. When a few of them had made a run for it she had wanted to go after them herself but Sasuke had ignored her and gone after them. Now she was trying to catch up while Sakura and Shino took care of tying up the prisoners. She wouldn't have any trouble finding him, not with that chakra signature. Besides, she could see smoke rising up into the air ahead of her. Coming to a small clearing she found him. He was standing there, laughing. As a fire consumed the grass in front of him, she could spot the remains of the 6 men who had tried to run from them. Sasuke's curse mark was active of course and his skin was marred by those black marks. Though the threat had hardly warranted it, Sasuke had activated his curse mark the instant they had attacked the bandit camp. The Hokage had wisely put strict limits onto when he could use that thing. He was not allowed to use it in the village or for practice. The only time he was permitted to activate it was for actual combat. Seeing they were up against ordinary bandits she had asked him not to use it. Obviously he hadn't paid any attention to her. She had tried to be reasonable with him, but it was time to set him straight about a few things. She leapt down into the clearing next to him. Sasuke, what happened here? Smiling he turned towards her. His smile made her worry. No need to worry sensei, I took care of things. She frowned at him. By which you mean you killed them? He nodded. Like I said, I took care of things. Why did you kill these men? She asked sharply. Surely they were not a threat to you. He sneered at the very idea. Them. I could have killed 1,000 like them and never broken a sweat. Then why didn't you try and take them prisoner? He shrugged. Didn't really cross my mind, they're only bandits after all. It seemed easier to just clean up the lot of them. Clean up. Kurenai repeated the words with distaste. These were living, breathing men, Sasuke, not stains on the wall. He gave her a flat look. They were the enemy, so I killed them. What's the problem? I'm a ninja and ninjas kill. She nodded. Ninjas kill, she agreed. But we don't kill except when we have to. The last few missions you have been awfully eager to kill. In fact, I would say whenever you have your curse seal active you seem most determined to slaughter whoever you're fighting. Am I supposed to apologize for that? For wanting to kill my enemies? He said with a bit of heat. She could sense his chakra level rising a bit, given where it was now. That was a frightening prospect. Since the battle is over now, release your curse mark. He frowned. Why? Because I told you to Genin I'm your sensei and it's enough that I give you an order. He didn't immediately obey. Sasuke, release the curse mark or be prepared to be brought up on charges when we return home. Sasuke gritted his teeth but let it go. He knew it was pointless. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't keep it active for long without suffering from chakra exhaustion. But he liked the feeling of all that power coursing through him and didn't like being told he had to give it up. As the power left him and the marks receded, he felt his strength fade away. He nearly collapsed and Kurenai actually had to grab his arm to support him for a moment. I'm fine, he muttered and pulled his arm away from her. Kurenai sighed. Sasuke, there's nothing wrong with receiving help from members of your team. He looked at her. There's also nothing wrong with trying to be as powerful as you possibly can be. I notice that you try and help Sakura and Shino as much as possible. I'm the only one you try and hold back. There's an important difference, Sasuke. Sakura and Shino are working to develop their innate abilities whereas you want to rely on your curse seal. Instinctively he put a hand to his neck to rub his seal. So what? It's a tool. No one would complain if I were using a scroll or weapon in battle. Those make you more effective too. Kurenai looked at him closely. There had always been something a little worrying about him. He'd always been a good ninja with the potential to be a great one. But there was something just beneath the surface that was troubling. Since he'd gotten the curse seal, it had been coming out more and more. He was obsessed with power and getting stronger. In small amounts that was a good thing in a ninja, it drove them to self-improvement. But in Sasuke his ambition to grow stronger swallowed up everything else. She honestly didn't know what to do. She shook her head. Sasuke, a scroll or a weapon wouldn't affect your mind. I have not failed to note that your personality has begun to change. You always had issues working with your teammates. But now you seem determined to work with them as little as possible. He shrugged. I don't mind working with them so long as they don't slow me down. He began walking back. But I'm going to get stronger no matter what. If they become a burden, then I don't need them. Teammates are not burdens, they are strengths. He didn't feel like arguing with her anymore, it was pointless anyway. Are we going back now? She accompanied him. I don't suppose they gave you any information before you cleaned up, those men. He shook his head. Sorry, nothing. XXXXXXXXXX. As they got back to the bandit camp, Sakura and Shino had finished tying up about 20 prisoners. Throughout the remains of the camp were bodies, most of them burned up. As soon as they returned, Sakura hurried over to them. Kurenai went over to check on the prisoners, knowing she wasn't the one Sakura wanted to talk to. Sakura hurried up to him and put her arms around him. Like usual, she could feel him stiffen just before he relaxed. He was still shy, but had agreed to letting her hug him. Are you all right, Sasuke-kun? He could hear the concern in her voice, but for some reason when it came from Sakura it just didn't annoy him the way it did from Kurenai. Likewise, he found that her hugs weren't so bad. He had agreed to be a bit more affectionate in public to make her happy and keep her close to him. At first it had bothered him, but he was getting used to it. He deliberately gave her a big cheerful smile. I'm just fine, Sakura-chan. I took care of the ones who got away, no problem. She looked up at him and smiled. Oh, I knew you would. You're so incredible, Sasuke-kun. There was adoration and worship in her eyes and in her voice. I really like her eyes. He caught himself. Just where the hell had that come from? He reached out and gently touched her cheek, making her blush. Well, thank you, Sakura-chan. He said tenderly to her, and he saw her blush deepen. She is really cute. And to his surprise he felt the sudden urge to be alone with her. Looking over, he saw that Kurenai and Mr. Personality were busy talking to the prisoners. He stepped back and grabbed her hand. Come on. She was surprised but went with him without complaint. They hurried a bit further into the woods. There was no chance of them getting lost or separated from the others too. Mr. Personality's little friends could always find them. Sasuke-kun were going to get in trouble. He smiled at her. Gee, Sakura-chan, I just wanted to show you something. It will only take a minute. He knew she would go with him anywhere he wanted. He knew she would do anything he asked her to. She was his. He'd seen it earlier and sure enough he spotted it again. He brought her to a halt in the middle of a great deal of underbrush. Here we are. She looked at him in surprise. Sasuke-kun, we're still in the middle of the forest. What's so special about this place? With a grin he pointed to a tree branch above them. There she suddenly saw a red and white plant. Oh, a vermala. And it suddenly hit her that Sasuke had led her to the spot right underneath it. He put his arms around her. You're trembling, he noted. It's nothing, she said nervously. He smiled at her and looked into her eyes. She could feel her knees getting weak. Do you remember the dance when I told you that when I kissed you it would mean I would give you my whole heart? I remember, she answered numbly. Well, that still applies, but we can make an exception for the vermala. And with that he leaned in and gave her what she had been dying for so long. He's kissing me. Sasuke-kun is kissing me. She shut her eyes and kissed him back. Had she died then and there she would have died happy. This was just one more way to control her. That was all it was. He had no real feelings for her at all. None. There was no chance that he could really care for her. Yet he found himself holding her just a little tighter and kissing her more eagerly than he had planned to. I like kissing her. He shoved that thought down. It didn't matter if he liked it or not. Sasuke, Sakura, the two of them instinctively jumped apart at the sound of their names. They both glared at Shino. Like always, he didn't seem to notice. Kurenai-sensei wants you back at the camp immediately. Sakura frowned. Hearing Shino's emotionless monotone was like being dunked in ice water. He would have to ruin the single most amazing experience in her whole life. Sasuke grinned. Sure, just need to do one thing first. He quickly leapt up to the side of the tree near the vermala. Clean and swift he cut off a single red and white leaf and put it carefully in a pocket. Then he leapt back down. What was that for? Shino asked. Sasuke looked at Sakura. Just something for later. He gave her a little wink. She immediately turned red and tried to hide an excited smile. I hope she keeps getting stronger. Sasuke thought. I would hate to have to leave her behind. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kurenai frowned at the two of them as they returned with Shino. But she decided to say anything. With everything else the two of them going for a bit was a minor issue. None of them seemed to have any idea where Itachi might be. It seems clear he abandoned his men when he found out we were in the area. That means we have no leads as to where he might be. I don't need to tell any of you how vital it is we find him soon. The longer he avoids us the likelier he is to get away with his captive. If we don't have a lead, what can we do? Sakura asked. Kurenai frowned. I hate to do it, but we're going to split up and search. At times like this she wished Sasuke was a Hyuga rather than an Uchiha. See if you can pick up any sort of trail, but if you do find something be very careful and don't try and engage him. Our opponent in a missing nin and a jonin, we'll deal with him as a team. She looked directly at Sasuke. Is that clear? Huh. Exactly what I was hoping for. Yes sensei, very clear. XXXXXXXXXX. About 3 miles away he found the entrance to a cave hidden behind some bushes. Right behind the bushes he spotted a bunch of cigarette stubs and knew he was in the right place. Leaving those stubs there was poor discipline, those bandits really were a bunch of incompetent idiots. Stepping into the cave he activated his curse seal, his Sharingan was already active. He knew there was no hiding his chakra signature. Come on out and face me. Sasuke called out. There's no getting away. He was hoping that Itachi was actually here and not 20 miles away. So he was very happy to see the missing nin step out where he could see him. Even better, he had his captive. He had the Lord's 8-year-old daughter in front of him. One hand was clamped over her mouth while the other held a kunai to her throat. Tell the rest of your team to get away from the cave entrance and let me go or I swear I cut her throat. Itachi said desperately. Sasuke looked at him with disappointment. He'd been hoping for a real test of his skills. My team isn't here, I tracked you down alone. Sure you did. Like some child would try and face me alone, even with all that weird chakra. Now call to your team and stand aside. Sasuke smiled. I have a better idea. How about you let the girl go and the two of us fight? Itachi looked at him as though he were insane. I don't care about fighting you. I just want to get away from here. Sasuke shook his head. You're not leaving this cave alive. The little squirmed a bit as the man's grip on her tightened. Shut up. Itachi was definitely looking scared now. If I don't get out of here she dies. Sasuke shook his head. The only way out of this cave is through me. Just let her go and take me on. Forget it, kid. Now get out and call to your team. Sasuke looked at the little girl. Close your eyes for a second, sweetheart. The little girl did so. What are? In a blur, Sasuke crossed the space between them, grabbed the hand holding the kunai at the girl's throat, yanked it back and shoved the missing nin's hand back so he drove it through his own left eye. Grabbing the girl, he picked her up and carried her out of the cave. Too bad it was so easy, I really wanted a challenge. He smiled to himself even as he tried to calm the crying little girl. So that was a Jonin, huh? I'm not impressed. XXXXXXXXXX. Well, sensei? Sasuke asked with a grin. They had just returned the girl to a very happy and grateful lord of the land of fire. They had accomplished their B rank and it was all thanks to him. How'd I do? Kurenai looked at him. Shino and Sakura were still inside. Things worked well, Sasuke, and I'll write you a formal recommendation. But, she focused on him sharply. I am still worried about you and your behavior. You need to focus more on your team and less on acquiring more power. He just smiled at her. They both knew he was not going to change a thing. On the way home with his squad, he was in an excellent mood and even invited Sakura to come join him and his family for dinner. He thought about what it had felt like to light those worthless bastards up like torches. He remembered the ease with which he had killed a Jonin whose skills Kurenai had respected. Most of all, he remembered the sense of power that ran through him whenever he activated his curse seal. He looked down at his hands. The hands that would kill Naruto and then Itachi, but Naruto first. I'm getting stronger every single day. Your time is coming, monster, soon. Chapter 46. Tsunade entered the main interrogation room of ANBU headquarters. Ibiki was already seated at the table with the missing nin. She had come in of her own free will, claiming to want to defect to Konoha. As such, she was classified as a guest, rather than as a prisoner, though that could change. Tsunade eyed the young woman sitting there. According to the interrogation report, she had an unpleasant manner. She'd been warned to behave herself in the presence of the Hokage. Ibiki tells me you wish to defect to Konoha. The young kunoichi looked decidedly unhappy as she nodded. Yeah, she bit down on whatever she was about to say. I would like to be a leaf ninja. Why? Tsunade asked suspiciously. She knew the stated reasons, of course. Everything had been in the report. But Tsunade wanted to hear and judge for herself. The kunoichi frowned. Well, basically I'm tired of having to run and hide from hunter nins all the time. I also want a home and a place for myself. Tsunade frowned. It sounded like the truth, but, considering what you've done, that's asking a lot. She again choked back a reply. I know that. That's why I brought you my present. Tsunade nodded. And quite a present it is. But whether or not we should accept it at face value is another matter. The kunoichi's short temper was starting to fray. Look, why would I turn myself over to you if this were a trap? I know you'd kill me. Tsunade nodded. We certainly would, but you might be doing this to save someone else or out of devotion to your leader. I'm not that selfless, she said flatly. Look, I've told you there's someone who I know will vouch for me. He's not in the village right now, but he should be back soon. She gave the girl a flat look. Are you sure he will vouch for you? She nodded. I'm sure. He seemed like a decent guy, if kind of scary. Tsunade stared at her. You should meet his mother sometime. Very well, until Naruto's return you'll remain here as our guest. You mean prisoner? The kunoichi muttered. No, I mean guest. You'll stay in an apartment rather than in a cell, and we won't chain you up. The former missing nin mumbled something but otherwise remained quiet. XXXXXXXXXXX. The three members of Team 7 returned from their B rank. The gate and most of the southern wall was still rubble. But at least the guard station had been rebuilt. Kotetsu and Azuma were the ones manning it today. Hinata went up to them immediately. Have Naruto and Kushina come back yet? Azuma shook his head. Sorry, but they haven't. Oh, Hinata felt her spirits plummet. Their mission had lasted 3 days and she'd really hoped they would be back. Come on, Hinata-chan, Kiba tried to cheer her up. I'm sure they'll be back any day now. She nodded. I know, I just really miss him. Since starting the academy they had hardly spent a day away from each other. It had only been 2 weeks but it felt like months to her. Listen, you two can head home. I'll go report in, Kakashi told them. They thanked him and each headed home. XXXXXXXXXXX. Tamari noted all the hostile looks she was getting. Even though she wanted to, she knew she couldn't glare back at them. A kunoichi could get away with that. A hostage was expected to be calm and accepting. Without conscious thought she walked a little closer to Shikamaru. He looked at her. You all right? Sure, she said dully. I love having people look at me like I was a rabid dog. Come on, is it really that bad? He had noticed the looks but was at a loss at what to do. How could you stop people from looking at someone? No, it's worse. At least the dog could bite someone. He looked at her in surprise. Now that doesn't sound like the scary girl I know. She frowned at him. I'm a hostage now. I'm expected to be polite, accepting and non-violent. He smirked at her. Non-violent, huh? I'll keep that in mind the next time you hit me. Ow. He looked at her as he rubbed the back of his head. Hey, what happened to being non-violent, you troublesome woman? That's with weapons, you lazy idiot. She saw they had arrived. She took a deep breath. Maybe this isn't such a good idea. What are you talking about? You said you wanted to have a flower garden. She nodded. I did. I had one in Suna and I loved it. Well, this is the only place to get flowers or flower seeds in that village. He could see Tamari was reluctant. You're not scared, are you? Huh. As if this would scare me. She sighed. I just don't want to have to deal with her, she hates me. It's been a month. I'm sure Ino has healed some and will be more polite this time. Tamari chuckled grimly. Care to bet? No. Shikamaru reached out and carefully took her hand into his. She started and felt her cheeks get just a touch of color. It'll be all right, come on. She didn't argue with him as he opened the door and led them into the Yamanaka flower shop. What she did was carefully close her fingers around his. XXXXXXXXXXX. Hayate arrived at the guard station with the team he had been temporarily assigned. The C rank had been accomplished without any trouble. He turned to his two short-term students. You both, cough cough. Can head home. All, cough. Report into the Hokage. You both, cough. Did very well. Gabriella bowed to him. Hayate-sensei, thank you again for the lessons in swordsmanship. They were very interesting. Hayate grinned and nodded. My style is a little, cough cough. Different from Kushina's. See if you can integrate what I've taught you with, cough cough. Her style. A beautiful purple-haired kunoichi in ANBU armor landed at his side. Yugao gave him a quick kiss and the two were soon walking away hand in hand. Watching the two of them go, she turned to her teammate. That's sweet, walking hand in hand like that. Haku nodded. It certainly is. So, you feel like getting a late lunch? He nodded. Certainly, Gabriella, in fact allow me to pay for it. Oh, she grinned at him. So you want to pay for our meal? Gee, that sounds a little like a date. It does. Haku sounded nervous. Gabriella couldn't help but widen her grin. He was just so cute when he was flustered and nervous. It sure does. She stood close to him and nonchalantly put a hand on his arm. So is it? He began to blush. Do you want it to be? She laughed. Way to be decisive. She smiled at him for a bit, enjoying the sight of his near panic. How about we just call it lunch, this time? She moved the hand on his arm down and placed it into his. He smiled at her a bit shyly and carefully closed his fingers around hers. All right. Hand in hand they went off to get some lunch. XXXXXXXXXXX. I see. Hiyashi said simply. Returning from each mission she was required to report to her father the mission's details. It was not unlike the report given to the Hokage. Very well, you may go. Hi, father. She bowed slightly and exited his study. She no longer dreaded going to his private study as she once had. Since her great improvement trip there had become sources of boredom rather than dread. She let out a long-held sigh. She just wished he would be less formal with her and more like he had been before Kasen died. He was so cold and distant. When she wanted warmth and comfort she turned to Naruto and Kushina. He was her heart and her courage. Kushina in the meantime had grown into a second mother for her. She never expressed that out loud, but it was how she viewed her. Being away from Naruto for so long was very hard. Not being able to turn to Kushina for guidance or comfort made it that much harder. She suddenly came to a halt as her sister stepped out in front of her. Hinata. Snapped out of her thoughts, Hinata looked at her younger sister. Oh hello Hanabi, I'm sorry, I'm very tired right now and want to rest. I will see you later. She tried to step around the younger girl only to have her sidestep and block her. Nisan, I challenge you to a match. Hanabi declared. Hinata sighed. Fine sister. We can spar tomorrow morning before I leave to meet my team. She didn't like sparring with Hanabi. Before training with Naruto, her younger sister had actually beaten her a number of times. But that had been a long time ago. Hanabi had been no match for her for over 3 years. Hanabi was actually quite good for her age, but their current skill levels were simply too far apart. No, not tomorrow. I want to fight you right now. Hanabi demanded. I am going to prove to father my worth. All he ever says to me is that I am nothing compared to you. Hinata frowned. Ash could well remember what it had been like to have father belittle her skills while comparing her to another family member. She sympathized with her younger sister's predicament but couldn't really help her. She knew her sympathy would not be appreciated, and to deliberately lose a spar was dishonorable. Hanabi, I will spar with you tomorrow. I've just gotten back from a mission and am tired. So please excuse me. Hinata again tried to get past. Hanabi shoved her back and dropped into a Juken fighting stance. Byakugan, she activated the family bloodline. No, I said I was fighting you today. Byakugan, Hinata regretfully dropped into a stance as well. Don't do this, sister. Spars are only permitted in the dojo. If we fight here in the hall, you will be punished for it. Hanabi was about to reply when the sharp rap of a cane on the wood floor drew the attention of both of them. Hanabi, stop this foolishness right now. Neji said. Hinata has already agreed to spar with you tomorrow. Just wait until then. Stay out of this, Neji. Hanabi said venomously. This has nothing to do with you. Actually, he approached the two of them with his slight limp. It is my concern. As a cadet branch member, it is my duty to protect the main branch members. Hanabi was furious. Typical. Everyone is always worried about protecting Hinata. But Neji shook his head. No, Hanabi, I am trying to protect you. If Hiyashi-sama learns about this, he will severely punish you. Neji grinned. Who knows? For such a gross violation of the rules, he may even put the caged bird seal on your head and place you in the cadet branch. Hanabi paled under such a threat. Father wouldn't do that. Are you sure? Not even if he caught you attacking the clan heir in the middle of the hall. Hanabi scowled but deactivated her Byakugan and stood straight. Fine. She glared first at Neji and then her sister. I will wait until tomorrow. She stormed off. Hinata deactivated her own Byakugan. Thank you, Neji. It is quite all right. He chuckled. It's a bit odd playing the peacemaker rather than the troublemaker for a change. He smiled at her. Say, Hinata, you haven't been starting any fights with Lee, have you? What? He laughed. Never mind. XXXXXXXXXXX. Hearing the little bell connected to the door jingle, Ino looked up from the magazine on the counter. Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop. She smiled seeing Shikamaru. Oh hey Shika, what? Then she spotted Tamari. Her eyes turned to slits when she noticed they were holding hands. What the hell is she doing here? Ino demanded. Shikamaru let out a breath. Tamari wants to start a flower garden and needs to get some seeds. Ino crossed her arms over her chest. We don't have any. Ino, Shikamaru began but was cut off. I said we don't have any. Not for her. Ino glared at Tamari. Tamari met the glare with ease. Under different circumstances she would have taught the girl some manners. But she was bound by the requirements of being a hostage. Shikamaru, let's just go, it's not a big deal. No, he surprised both girls by the vehemence of his answer. Ino, I know you've suffered losing your father just like I have, but you can't take it out on Tamari. Of course I can. She's the enemy. She and all the others helped kill my father. Ino, she's not the enemy anymore. Now all she is an honored guest of my clan. One who wants to spend money in your shop. As for what she did during the battle, she was simply a soldier following orders. Please stop being so troublesome. Ino glared at him. You two are getting pretty chummy, huh? Don't you have any shame? She and the others like her betrayed and attacked us. How can you like her after that? Easy, because she's a good person. He looked at Tamari. He still hadn't let go of her hand. Kind of scary a lot of the time and very troublesome, but a good person. Kind of like you, Ino. I know you're way too good a person to really punish someone for doing their duty. Now can we please get some seeds? Ino continued to frown but uncrossed her arms. I'll do this for you, Shika, but she is still not welcome. As Ino headed towards the back to get some seeds, Tamari leaned close to him. Thank you, she whispered. He just nodded. You're welcome, troublesome woman. XXXXXXXXXX. I'm so glad you're back, Hinata. Alyssa said. I asked Hanabi to play with me but she just ignored me and said she needed to train. I'm sorry if she was a bit mean to you, Alyssa-chan. Hanabi has certain issues she is trying to deal with. When will Kasen and Nisan be back? I really miss them. I know, I miss them too. I don't know when they'll be back but it should be soon. Her radio crackled to life. Hinata-chan, can you hear me? She immediately slapped the send button. Naruto-kun, is that you? She said excitedly. Hinata-chan, it's so good to hear your voice again. I've missed you. Oh Naruto-kun, I've missed you too. Where are you? Are near the south gate. Yeah, we'll be there soon. Can you come meet us? There's someone I really want you to meet. I'll be right there. I'll see you soon, Naruto-kun. All the sorrow of the past 2 weeks was now completely forgotten. Can I come too, please? Alyssa pleaded. Sure, let's go and meet them. XXXXXXXXXXX. So this is Hinata. An old man smiled at her and then at a somewhat shy 8-year-old standing next to her. And you must be Alyssa. I am very happy to meet both of you. Hinata bowed to the man. I am most pleased to meet you, Seishu-san. It is wonderful that Naruto has found some family. Alyssa stared up at him a bit nervously. Are you really Nisan's grand uncle? Seishu smiled down at her and nodded. Yes, I really am. If you don't believe me, just ask Kushina. Alyssa nodded a bit. Does this make you my grand uncle too? Naruto and Kushina had explained things to him so he understood the little girl had with them. Well, of course, if you Naruto's little sister, then that would make you my grandniece. Alyssa began to smile. Will you tell me stories sometimes? And much as Naruto normally did, he reached down and rubbed the top of her head. Of course I will. Kushina smiled. From now on, when Naruto and I are both away on missions, he'll be the one taking care of you. I will. He asked nervously. Kushina nodded firmly. Welcome home, uncle. I hope you enjoy babysitting. A bit off to the side, Naruto had Hinata in his arms and the two of them were kissing. Hinata found she didn't mind doing that in public. She was so happy to have him back, she just wanted to kiss him and hold him even if the whole world saw. Welcome back, Naruto-kun. She squeezed him just a bit tighter and pressed her face into his neck. I don't ever want to be away from you again. He held her a bit tighter as well. I don't want to be away from you either, Hinata-chan, but orders are orders. She nodded. That was a truth about shinobi life. They served their villages at the Hokage's wish, not their own. Well, at least you should be getting a few days before your next mission. Ah, Naruto. They both looked up. Hey Kakashi Nisan, Naruto said. It's great to see you. I want to introduce you to my grand uncle Uzumaki Seishu. Kakashi nodded to the man. Naruto, I can't wait to hear all about how your uncle and how things went, but right now the Hokage needs to see you. Now. Both Hinata and Naruto chorused. Kakashi sighed. I'm afraid so. Come on, let's go. XXXXXXXXXXX. Surprisingly, they didn't go to the tower but instead met the Hokage at ANBU headquarters. They were escorted to the main interrogation room where Tsunade, Ibiki, and one other waited for them. As soon as they entered, Naruto recognized her. You. Tayuya grinned and nodded. When I heard the stories, I knew it had you be you. Namikaze Naruto, Demon of the Leaf. What are you doing here? Naruto asked. She is here requesting to become a leaf ninja. What do you think about that? Tsunade interjected. Naruto looked at her closely. I'm not sure, I don't really know her. Ibiki flipped open the report that was in front of him. She says that during the battle her squad encountered you. She said you killed her squad mates and were in a position to kill her as well but instead let her go, telling her to leave the battle and not return. Would you say that is accurate? Naruto nodded. Yeah, I guess I would. Why did you spare her, Naruto? She didn't really give us a reason. Tsunade inquired. Naruto looked at the red-haired girl. You didn't tell them about what your friend was up to. She seemed to squirm a bit in her seat. No, I left that part out. Tsunade frowned. What are the two of you referring to? One of her teammates was about to rape a girl when I showed up. Naruto said bluntly. Tsunade had a look of disgust. She was trying to stop him. That's why I let her go. I see. Tsunade said flatly. She leaned back in her seat. Naruto, what would you say if I told you that she brought us some very interesting intel that was offering in exchange for joining us? Would you believe it? He thought about it, then slowly nodded. Probably, she didn't seem the suicidal type. I don't think she would give herself up and then try to trick us. I see. She looked to Ibiki. Return her to her apartment, she remains under confinement for now. Hey, Yuya demanded. Do you still not King believe me? I do, but until this is over you remain at that apartment without contacting anyone. Ibiki took her away. She focused on Naruto and sighed. I hate to do this to you Naruto, but you and your team are leaving on a mission tomorrow morning. What? But godmother I just got back not 15 minutes ago. She nodded sympathetically. I know Naruto but it can't be helped. If the information Yuya brought us is accurate we have to act on it immediately. We can't risk circumstances changing. Your team has reconnaissance and espionage specialists and you and Kakashi are two of the most powerful ninja in the village. Your team is ideal. She looked at both of them very seriously. Kakashi, Naruto, I am assigning Team 7 an S-rank mission of the highest possible danger and importance. S-rank, Kakashi said nervously. Really? Naruto sounded eager. What's the mission? She frowned. This was yet another one of those times when her personal wishes conflicted with what she had to do as Hokage. Yet again she was putting her godchild in terrible danger. We'll start going over the mission details as soon as we get Hinata and Kiba here, but I'll tell you the mission objective. I can state it for you in just 2 words. Yeah, Tsunade looked at him and spoke. Kill Orochimaru. Chapter 47. Karin listened to the hum of the motors as she saw the lights in the corridor flicker for a moment and then go off. She looked at the readouts and sighed. She normally had about half a dozen lab assistants working for her doing the menial tasks. But since being assigned to save Lord Orochimaru's arms she'd decided there was no choice but to work alone. She simply couldn't risk anyone else finding out the truth. The truth being of course that she had no freaking clue how to accomplish her goal. She had taken samples of Orochimaru's blood and given him some X-rays. She was in her lab 12 or more hours a day busy, experimenting. A lab assistant would have revealed all her activity was nothing but a smokescreen to convince Orochimaru and others that she really was making progress and working hard towards her goal. Of course being tasked to do this by Orochimaru had given her carte blanche to do anything she wanted, no matter how strange. For instance right now she was running her healing energy motors and draining most of the power from the base. The previous base commander had been livid at the idea and refused to allow her to draw so much power into her lab. She had gone to Orochimaru and told him the commander was getting in the way of her work. Not 15 minutes later he had been butchered in the command post as others stood there and watched. The current base commander was only too eager to give her anything she wanted. Of course the one thing she wanted most of all she was forbidden by Orochimaru himself to have. She could not leave the base. Anything she wanted to send out, anything she wanted delivered to her, would be done instantly. But she herself was a prisoner in fact if not name. Worst of all Orochimaru had decided to remain here until she either cured him or her time limit ran out. I hope things are going well Karin-chan. He'd said to her just the other day. I would hate to have to find someone else to be my chief researcher. She shivered at the friendly tone he'd used. At least when she was dealing with test subjects she never pretended to be their friend. She let out a sigh wondering if she really only had weeks left to live. She knew she could get out of the base if she needed to. The problem was if she did that she had no faith she would be able to long escape the hunter nins. Curing him was impossible. Escape was likely to only buy her a few days or weeks. So she had come up with a third alternative. XXXXXXXXXX. The 5 of them had been sitting at the small table going over the impressive stack of documents laid out before them. Is all of this real? Naruto asked suspiciously. I mean medical data, security codes, base blueprints, and even someone inside ready to help us. It just seems way too good to be true. Tsunade frowned. I know exactly what you mean. That's why I had Ibiki interrogate her fully and even waited to have her talk to you. It does seem like a bit much but Ibiki believes her testimony to be true. And we have some corroborating evidence from other sources. Just what sort of evidence? Kakashi asked. We've received reports that Orochimaru has been severely wounded since the attack. We'd also received word that he was unable to perform jutsus. She had a grim smile. It looks as though Sarutobi was able to cripple him in their fight. So is that why he ran away? Kakashi asked. Kiba laughed. Oh man, I can't wait. If he can't work any jutsus, he'll be a sitting duck. Tsunade and Kakashi both frowned. Tsunade's frown deepened when she saw Naruto smiling in obvious agreement. Don't believe that for even a second. Tsunade barked out. He's a Sannin just like me. Even if he can't work jutsus or use his arms, he is still unbelievably dangerous. Kiba grinned. What's he going to do? Bite me? Maybe, she said flatly. Keep in mind he can still use his legs and still has the Sharingan. He is an evil genius, and I wouldn't even try to guess just what sort of nasty surprises he might have prepared. You've never actually seen him, Kakashi said quietly. I got to know him as a young ninja. He is very frightening. Naruto looked at him in surprise. Nissen, you actually sound a little scared. Kakashi looked back. If you'd ever known him, Naruto, you would understand why. Is he that powerful? Naruto inquired. He was considered to be your father's equal in every way. Tsunade said bluntly. That should tell you everything you need to know. Naruto slowly nodded as he digested that. Hokage-sama, if he is truly so powerful, why are we being assigned to assassinate him? Hinata asked. Because unfortunately your squad has the right abilities for this task. You and Kiba will aid in reaching the target undetected, while Kakashi and Naruto will be able to deal with the actual assassination. What? Kiba sounded offended. We just helped them get there and they're supposed to do the actual job. How come? Tsunade looked at him. How many people have you killed, Kiba? He looked embarrassed. Well, none. None, she repeated. She looked at Kakashi. How many have you killed? He had served in the Third Great Ninja War and been a legend in the ANBU Black Ops. A little over 600 total. Kakashi answered. What about you, Naruto? Naruto looked uncomfortable and his eyes flashed to where Hinata was. I don't know exactly, but somewhere over 300. She looked back to Kiba. That's why. Hokage-sama, Kakashi spoke up. While I appreciate the faith you're showing in us, don't you think we should have some backup? Tsunade shook her head. Kakashi, this mission will take you deep into enemy territory. Stealth will be the key to survival, not only getting there but coming back. Any more than the basic 4-man platoon will make it difficult to mask your movements. Believe me, I am not eager to send Naruto and the rest of you into Rice Country. But this is simply too good an opportunity to pass up. She sat back. Go there, make contact with this traitor, eliminate the target, and then get out of there. Naruto asked, what do we do with him? The one who sent to Yuya all this info and wants to help us. When you are near, you will contact him on the radio frequency as specified and he will help you enter undetected. Once that is done, you'll simply let him go. Let him go? Naruto asked. That's it. Tsunade nodded. Apparently whoever he is desperate to leave Orochimaru's service. All he wants is for us to help him leave and to kill Orochimaru. She looked at Kakashi. I want to hear your opinion, Kakashi. He looked down at the documents. If all this is real, then of course we have to take advantage of it. And even though I would feel more comfortable with a larger strike force, I believe this team can do it. Tsunade nodded. So do I. XXXXXXXXXX. You're leaving tomorrow morning. On an S rank. Kushina sounded furious. Naruto just nodded. That's right, mom, me and my team, so I hope it's okay that I asked Hinata-chan over for dinner. She waved that away. Of course it is. But what is Tsunade thinking? You just got back, and why is she sending you on an S rank? Naruto smiled. Because she knows me and my squad are awesome. Kushina frowned. They are S ranks for a reason, Naruto-kun. She shouldn't send you on such dangerous missions. She looked at her son carefully. I don't suppose you'd care to tell me about the mission. He shook his head. Mom, you know I can't do that. He smiled at her excitedly. But I promise to tell you all about it when I get back. You'll be amazed. She shook her head. Seeing you this excited only makes me more worried. XXXXXXXXXXX. He had really wanted for Grand Uncle Seishu and Hinata to get to know one another before they left for the mission. His mom had already made a medical appointment with the Hokage to see what could be done for him. I really hope Godmother can help him. Naruto said. They'd had a really nice dinner and now he and Hinata were sharing a bench in the rose garden. It was just starting to get dark and the air was crisp. She was snuggled up close to him and he had his arms around her. I'm sure the Hokage will be able to do something. Hinata said. I really like your grand uncle, he seems really wise and kind. Yeah, I like him too. I really hope Godmother can fix things. Having her in his arms, he leaned in close to her. I really missed you, Hinata-chan. He said softly. A light crimson touched her cheeks. I missed you too, Naruto-kun. She closed her eyes as he kissed her and happily returned his affection. Naruto-kun, I don't care where we are or what we do. So long as we are together, I am happy. XXXXXXXXXXX. They were looking out from a second-story window over the rose garden. They really are very cute together, aren't they? Seishu said with a grin. Kushina nodded. They were even cuter when they were little. I'll show you some pictures. Alyssa let out a sigh. Kasen. Yes dear. Will I ever get to fall in love like that? Kushina smiled and hugged the little girl. I'm sure you will, honey, but give it time. You have a lot of growing up to do. Seishu chuckled and rubbed the top of her head affectionately. Just make sure not to break too many hearts when you're older. XXXXXXXXXXX. It was 5:45 in the morning and both his mom and grand-uncle were up to wish him well. Kushina hugged her son and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Please be careful, Naruto-kun. Whatever the mission is, take it seriously and come back unhurt. He nodded, a huge smile on his face. I will, Mom. Seishu grinned. When you get back, Naruto, we'll find a place where we can go fishing. I'd really like that. And we'll see if your mother still remembers how to cook fish. What? She turned on him. Are you questioning my cooking skills, old man? Just wondering if you still remember anything about how to make fish. You know those little creatures that live in the water. Seeing his mother starting to turn red, he decided it was a good time to get going. XXXXXXXXXX. Breathe deeply once more, please. Tsunade said. Seishu complied. Tsunade ended the diagnostic jutsu and frowned worriedly. Your lungs and respiratory system are in terrible condition. What happened? Are you a heavy smoker? He shook his head. I used a jutsu to breathe salt water. She quirked an eyebrow. That's it. Even if the jutsu didn't work as well as it should have, that wouldn't explain the extensive damage. I used it hundreds of times. She grimaced. Well, that would explain it. Had you not come here, you would have only had a few more months. Kushina couldn't bear it. Can you help him, Tsunade? She pleaded. I know that if anyone can, it would be you. Tsunade slowly nodded. I think I can repair most of the damage. She looked at Seishu sternly. You must never use that jutsu again, and you must never smoke or even be around smoke. Your lungs will remain weakened for the rest of your life. Seishu nodded. I have no reason to use that jutsu and I've never been a smoker. I thank you for whatever you can do to help me. Tsunade nodded. Since you're in good health, otherwise I'll go ahead and schedule the operation for tomorrow. Will he be fully healed? Kushina asked. Here Tsunade shook her head. Not completely, the damage is too extensive for that. But it should be enough to allow him to live normally for a good many years. Both Seishu and Kushina were incredibly happy and relieved to be told that. It looked like Seishu would be part of the family for some time to come. XXXXXXXXXXX. It had taken 6 days to reach their goal. Going on a straight line, they could have reached it in 4. But the need to avoid any contact with anyone had led them to take a roundabout path. Whenever Kiba or Hinata would warn them there was someone in the area, ninja or civilian, they would detour away. Doing so, they had crossed into Rice Country and masked their presence. They approached the mountain base that was their goal. They waited until after dark to make their approach. So do you think all this is just a trap? Naruto asked Kakashi in a whisper. Kakashi set his radio to the frequency that had been provided. We are about to find out. He hit his send button. Hawk to caged bird, please respond. Chapter 48. Turkey, ham, salami, cheese, lettuce, onion, mustard and mayo. As she slapped on each, she piled up the sandwich and then slapped on another piece of bread. Then taking it with her, she went over to the couch. She just had on some baggy shorts and a plain white t-shirt. Sitting down, she leaned back, put her feet up on the little table in front of her and began eating. Her visitor eyed her critically. He had no idea how she'd been raised, but he had all the manners of a pig in a pen. You're going to get crumbs in the sofa. She glared at him as she finished chewing what was in her mouth. Who are you, my F and king mother? Like I F and king care about crumbs. Given the clothes lying on the floor everywhere, he could believe that. So are you here to interrogate me again? Ibiki shook his head. I'm here to ask you a few questions, not interrogate you. What's the F and King difference? He frowned at her. The difference is that if this were a proper interrogation you wouldn't be having a sandwich and sitting on a couch. He had to admit that dealing with her was a unique experience for him as an interrogator. Usually his subjects were scared to death. Either they knew who he was and his reputation or were terrified by being dragged to ANBU headquarters. Of course he got his share of tough guys who didn't scare easily. But they always saw him as the enemy and acted accordingly. Yuya was truly not afraid of him, she saw him as nothing but a civil servant doing his job. Having someone view him as merely annoying was different. And not a good different. But he had orders from the Hokage to treat her as a guest. In any case, I need to ask you a few more questions. More F and King questions. I've been doing nothing but answering questions since I got here. I've told you about the Sound Village, the Curse Seal, his forces, his past movements, how I was recruited, some of his jutsus. What the hell else do you want? He frowned at her. I have a great many more questions to ask you and you will answer them or I will inform the Hokage you are no longer being cooperative. I never said I wouldn't answer. She took another bite. So, she asked with a mouth full of food. Someone really needs to teach this little girl some manners. Too bad it can't be me. What do you know about enemy operatives, spies that might be in Konoha working for him? Spies. She shook her head. I was a part of his elite bodyguard, I didn't deal with spies. She thought for a second. Well, except for the geek. Geek. She nodded. I was part of his bodyguard a couple times when he met with him. The guy wore a Konoha Hitai Ite, so I guess he had to be a spy. I don't know his name though. Can you describe him? Tall, thin, silver hair, with glasses, around my age, maybe a little older, very quiet, you know, a basic geek. Ibiki frowned. Something about her description touched a memory. So he was a teenager with silver hair and glasses. She nodded. Oh, and I think he was a medic nin. Lord Orochimaru mentioned something about his working medical jutsus one time. He looked at her sharply. Are you sure he was a medic nin? She shrugged and wolfed down the last of her sandwich. No, not really, but I think so. If I show you a picture, would you be able to identify him? I guess. Knowing what they would be discussing, Ibiki had brought a copy of the ninja registry with him. Within were the pictures and records of every active leaf. Shinobi. Here, take a look and tell me if you see him. She took the registry and began flipping through it. Until she came to a stop. Here he F and King is. He looked over to where she had the registry open. Are you sure? She glared at him. Of course I'm F and King sure. He's the geek. Ibiki slowly nodded. He knew him, Yakushi Kabuto. He had attended the Chunin exams and was currently receiving training from the Hokage herself. This could be bad, the Hokage would not like one of her students being a traitor. He took the registry back and stood up to go. Thank you, we will talk again tomorrow. Whatever. XXXXXXXXXXX. Karin felt the communicator buzz and sudden hope and dread filled her heart. She had already checked today to make certain there were no listening devices in her lab. She switched on the communicator and hoped this was what she'd been hoping for. Yuya was an acquaintance, not quite a friend, she had gotten to know. Using some of her connections she had managed to get a message out to her. They had quickly made a deal, they would help each get what they wanted. Karin had passed on the information and Yuya had agreed to deliver it. Now she was likely to find out if her plans had succeeded or killed her. This is Caged Bird, go. She spoke into the radio communicator. A woman's voice. Kakashi shrugged, it didn't really matter. This is Hawk, we have come here for the crow. Are you prepared to assist? On condition that the caged bird goes free. Yes, that is the agreement. Enter through point G in 30 minutes, I will meet you there and assist. 30 minutes, understood. Out. Out. Karin switched on her generators to full power, that would shut down the security cameras in most of the base's systems. Now she hurried to her computer console and quickly got to work. Being a genius had its advantages, most people had no idea just how much you could do with computers so long as you knew the language they spoke. Theoretically, it was even possible to connect all the computers in the world into one massive community and have all that information available to any user anywhere in the world. She smiled at such an outlandish idea. Before that happened, there would need to be phone lines and radio systems to connect all the lands together. Phones, radios, and computers were all strictly for local area use. She shook her head. This was no time for daydreams. She downloaded all the information into a single disk. Popping it out, she smiled and put the precious disk into a case. The disk had everything she'd ever worked on, all the secrets of the curse seal and other more interesting experiments. Once she was free and Orochimaru was dead, she could sell it to the highest bidder and never worry about money again. In the meantime, she had a nice thick wad of Ryu notes in her lab coat to tide her over. She couldn't risk going back to her rooms and changing. Once she was free, she'd buy herself a new wardrobe. With her one precious disk in a lab coat, she typed in a command to the console and checked her watch. She set the tapeworm program to begin erasing everything in the database. As paranoid as Orochimaru was about secrecy, the information had not been backed up anywhere else. That still left the hard copies in her lab, all the papers and records. She got out a 5-gallon drum of kerosene and hurried over to the file cabinets. Opening the drawers, she quickly doused them and splashed kerosene all over the lab. She checked her watch again. She had 10 minutes to meet with her rescuers. She set the timer on a small detonator to 15 minutes. She thought for just a second about the possibility that that call had come from one of Orochimaru's men and she was heading into a trap. But she shook off that possibility. If Lord Orochimaru had even suspected what she had in mind, he would have strolled into her lab and dealt with her immediately. She would not have gotten the chance to do so much harm. With everything now set, she left her lab for the last time and went out into the darkened corridor where the emergency lights were on and flickering. Now it was time to make a run for freedom and the good life. XXXXXXXXXXX. Team 7 had rushed towards the base and were at Point G as it was marked on the blueprints. It was nothing but a nondescript section of the wall. There had seen a patrol go past here just 2 minutes earlier, and if things continued to match their observations, it would come back through in 8 minutes. What do we do if this turns out to be a trap? Naruto asked quietly. Kakashi smiled. Probably die or get taken prisoner. Naruto grimaced. Well, that's a cheerful thought. You asked. Someone is coming. Hinata whispered. Her Byakugan was active. They all looked about. I mean from inside. Not long after her warning, a section of the wall opened and the secret door there became obvious. Karin had only learned of it and of the passageway when she'd pulled up the base blueprints. She stepped out into the night and met the four-leaf nins. She had no time to waste. Orochimaru should be in his rooms as they were marked. He can't use his arms or work jutsus, but he has a Sharingan and can extend his neck maybe 20 yards to bite. The security system is down, as are most of the lights. There'll be an explosion in. She checked her watch. 9 minutes. She went past them. Have fun storming the castle and you had better kill him. Hey, we don't even know your name. Naruto protested as she went. What do you want, a date? She said frostily and then leapt away as fast as she could. Forget her, it doesn't matter who she is. Let's go. Hinata, I want you to warn us if we're about to run into anyone. We'll avoid them if at all possible. Now let's move. Kakashi led them in through the secret passageway. XXXXXXXXXX. Orochimaru stared up from his bed towards the ceiling. The pain medication did little to ease the agony coming from his limbs. I am not going to live like this for 3 years. Damn you, sensei. Why couldn't you have just died like you were supposed to? Outside his door he heard some noise. He muttered to himself, what were those incompetent guards doing? He had just gotten up off his bed when his door exploded. What? He leapt back and activated his Sharingan. 2 figures entered his private quarters. One he immediately recognized, and Kakashi with a Rikiri forming in his hand. The other was a Mirbai with blonde hair and a katana in his hands. He could guess who the boy was. Come to pay me a visit, Kakashi. And you must be Minato's brat. Naruto growled. We're here to kill you. This is the end for you, Orochimaru. For your betrayal and crimes against Konoha we have come to carry out the sentence of death. Kakashi rushed forward with his lightning blade and Naruto with his sword. Tracking them with his Sharingan, Orochimaru bent backwards and away from them. With a leg sweep he managed to trip Kakashi. Naruto turned and came straight at him even as Kakashi stumbled to get back up. Opening his mouth, a snake spat out, and from the snake's mouth exited a long straight blade. Naruto was too close to dodge and it went into his chest. Orochimaru laughed. I am full of surprises. The skewered Naruto grinned just before puffing out of existence. So am I. An angry voice said from behind as a katana's blade went in through his back and out through the front. Orochimaru's sword dropped from his mouth as he looked at the boy. Not bad. Kakashi was on his feet and had his Rikiri ready for the death blow. It's over. Not yet, he hissed. His head snapped back and his jaws seemed to unhinge themselves. From out of his mouth a gigantic white snake leapt out. XXXXXXXXXXX. At that moment there was an explosion from somewhere and alarms began to sound. Kiba and Hinata were watching the corridor and keeping their escape route open while Kakashi and Naruto performed the actual assassination. Along with the klaxon they could also hear the sound of shouts and running feet. There are about 20 men coming this way. Hinata warned. Are they just guards or are there any ninja? Kiba asked. Just guards. Kiba nodded. No problem for the three of us then. Akamaru shouted his agreement. Hinata dropped into a Juken fighting stance ready to do her part. XXXXXXXXXXX. Orochimaru's body dropped to the floor like a shed skin. Kakashi slammed his lightning blade into the snake's form even as it was escaping from Orochimaru's mouth. He was rewarded with an explosion of very dark blood and the sight of the snake's tail end being torn away from the rest. The snake howled in pain and twisted about. Naruto wrenched his bloodied sword out. How the hell did he summon this thing without hand signs? And where did he go? Naruto. I think this is Orochimaru's true form. Naruto looked at the monster with disgust. You mean he's not human? Not anymore. Kakashi swiftly formed another Rikiri as his exposed Sharingan tracked the snake's sudden strike. Naruto moved. The snake's open mouth snapped forward aimed at his chest. Naruto dodged back only a step and brought his katana slicing up from his waist. As the large head just missed him his blade entered the fanged mouth. The snake's own momentum drove it into the cutting edge. Naruto was drenched with back blood as his katana cut along the side and tore open a gaping wound. In pain and blind fury the snake lashed about and knocked him back as it twisted around. The katana was torn from his hands and was lodged on the snake's right side. Enraged and in pain the snake reared back to attack Naruto again only to see Kakashi coming at it. At the last instant it tried to dodge, but with Kakashi using his own Sharingan he was able to strike again ripping into the snake's flesh. Rasengan. Naruto formed his own attack jutsu and joined in. He struck the back of the snake that was facing Kakashi. Using a lot of chakra the Rasengan did not merely cut into the snake's body, it tore it in half. The half with the head and the lodged katana landed on the floor at Kakashi's feet. It twitched and slithered about desperately trying to get away now, but it could hardly move. Orochimaru was doomed. Exposing his true form had been an act of desperation. He was simply too large a target to avoid his enemies' strikes or get away. If he'd been able to possess one of their bodies he might have survived. But then if he could have done that he wouldn't have been in danger to begin with as he would have had his jutsus. Kakashi approached carefully and created one last lightning blade. It was eating a lot of his chakra but he wasn't taking any chances. Do you want the honor of the killing blow Naruto? Naruto shook his head. No Nisan, you can have it. Alright, I'm just sorry I couldn't have had this chance years sooner. With that he plunged his hand into the snake's head. With that the great Orochimaru, both genius and monster, finally died. Our orders are to destroy the body completely. Kakashi said as he activated a simple fire jutsu. All right. Naruto yanked out his katana and left the room to join Kiba and Hinata in the corridor. There were 20 men on the floor, all of them unconscious. We did it, we're going to leave in a second. Hinata asked. He's really dead. Naruto nodded. Warily. He really is. They had accomplished their goal, but now had to make it back alive. Kakashi exited the room that was now ablaze. He quickly covered up his Sharingan again. He was sweating and puffing a bit. All right, let's get out of here same way as we came. With Hinata guiding them they began to move. XXXXXXXXXXX. There was a knock on his door. Not expecting visitors Kabuto answered it. To his surprise there were 2 ANBU standing there. May I help you ANBU-san? He said politely. The one in the owl mask spoke. Come with us please, you are needed to answer a few questions at ANBU headquarters. I see. He answered with a smile. Activating his chakra blade he moved with lethal speed taking them by surprise. The one with the owl mask got his throat cut while the other had his heart sliced in half while still inside his chest. It was not the first time Kabuto had been underestimated. If the ANBU had suspected what he truly was, there would have been at least a dozen of them. He dragged the bodies swiftly into his apartment and put on one of their uniforms. Time was of the essence, so he would not bother taking anything with him from the apartment. There was nothing incriminating in it anyway. He was much too smart to ever write anything down that might prove dangerous. He had always known that his time in the Leaf Village might end suddenly, and now it had. His work as a spy was over and he would need to return to his Lord Orochimaru. Leaving the only home he had ever really known, he had 3 regrets. He would like to have said goodbye to his adoptive father. He would have liked to have done the same with his only real friend Novel. And he would have liked to have completed his last mission, but it seemed Tsunade's death would have to wait. But he might make time for one quick stop before leaving the village. XXXXXXXXXXX. Sasuke, there's a phone call for you. His mother said. I've got it, Mom, thanks. He waited for her to click off. Yes, Sasuke, it's your good friend. He didn't name himself, but he was sure Sasuke knew his voice. A little trouble came up, so I'm taking a little trip. Just wanted to let you know. I see, Sasuke spoke carefully. Would this trouble have anything to do with me? No, of course not. A cheerful voice answered. Though a few questions may be asked, there is no reason for my trouble to bother you. I'm not sure when we'll see each other again, but I suspect that we will. I'll give our mutual acquaintance your best. With that, the line clicked dead. Sasuke hurriedly hung up his end and returned to his room. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kabuto hung up the pay phone and headed for the gate. With the ANBU's face and it, leaving the village would be no problem at all. Chapter 49. They were 2 days out of the enemy base when a single sound nin approached them. Both Hinata and Kiba confirmed that he really was alone rather than a scout for a larger party. He was a deathly pale and thin teenager with white hair and 2 red dots above his brow. Though it was obvious he was ill, the sound nin attacked the 4 of them without hesitation. He had a unique ability to draw bones from his body and use them as weapons. The sound nin stood calmly in a field surrounded by Kakashi, Kiba, Hinata, Naruto and 100 clones. He was sweating and clearly having difficulty breathing. Despite being an enemy and attacking, none of them had any real desire to kill him. Look, Naruto spoke to him. You can't win this fight. Just leave and we'll let you go. The teen shook his head and charged, holding a long hunk of bone like a sword. I have no desire to live now that he is dead. As he charged, he was met by a dozen clones. Naruto was surprised to see the bone actually stand up to cuts from a katana. He was even more surprised to see the skill with which the teen defeated his clones. You're a 5th level master of the blades. He nodded. I am, not that it matters now that he is no more. You mean Orochimaru? Naruto asked. Yes, he betrayed the Leaf Village and was our enemy. Naruto said flatly. It was our duty to kill him. The sound nin nodded. Yes, I understand that. And it pleases me slightly to know he met his end at the hands of ninjas with honor. But he was the only one who ever truly understood me, the only one who ever cared. I am ill and am soon to die. When I die, my clan will die with me and be no more. I had hoped to live on in Lord Orochimaru's heart. But now that he is gone, when I leave this earth I will truly be forgotten. Kiba shook his head. You actually think a bastard like him cared about you? You were just brainwashed. Fury filled the young man's eyes. Shut up. What the hell would you know about it? He charged forward and Naruto and his clones got ready. But after taking 4 of 5 steps he suddenly cried out and clutched his chest. Blood poured from his mouth and he collapsed in the grass. Naruto, be careful. Hinata called out as he rushed to the ninja's side. Naruto knelt beside him. It was obvious that the young man was at his end. Naruto did not want him to die alone and took his hand. I'm sorry. The ninja looked up at him, but if he wanted to say something he was unable to as his breath left him and he died. Naruto got back up. The rest of his team was beside him. He reminded me a little of Haku. I think everyone needs at least one precious person in their lives. Too bad his had to be such a complete bastard. Kiba remarked. Naruto couldn't really argue that. Kakashi spoke. All right, we have to keep going, we're not out of Rice Country yet and we still may run into enemy patrols. Naruto and the others nodded. All but 2 of the clones disappeared in a puff of smoke. Give him a proper burial. The two clones nodded. Naruto and the rest of his team got moving again. I never even knew his name. XXXXXXXXXXX. They ran into no further trouble and Team 7 returned home early in the afternoon of October 8th. XXXXXXXXXXX. You're absolutely certain? Tsunade asked. Kakashi nodded with a smile beneath the mask. Yes, Hokage-sama, the Sannin Orochimaru is confirmed dead. Who had the killing blow? She asked. Kakashi shrugged. That would be me. But, he added quickly, I couldn't have done it without my team's help. She nodded, smiling at the rest of the team in her office. That of course goes without saying. You should all be very proud of yourselves. You've helped remove the greatest threat Konoha has ever known. She turned her focus back to Kakashi. You though are going to be known as the killer of Orochimaru. She reached into a desk drawer and took out an envelope. Here, this is yours. She handed it to him. What is it? He took the envelope warily. Tsunade smiled. That is a certified check for 50 million ryu, the total of all outstanding bounties on Orochimaru. There was complete silence for a moment. Cool, Kiba said. Lunch is on sensei from now on. Nissan. Naruto was just able to catch him as Kakashi fainted. XXXXXXXXXXX. Huh. I still can't believe you fainted like that, sensei. Kiba joked as they left the restaurant. Naruto had actually wanted to go to Ichiraku's, but Kiba was loudly insistent they go to a more expensive steakhouse. Kakashi rolled his one visible eye. Fine, Kiba, the next time you get handed a check for 50 million ryu you had better not faint. Naruto looked at him curiously. What are you going to do with it? Kakashi smiled. Invest it. I wonder if the publisher for the Ika Ika series is available for sale. Well, just be sure to put some of that into a present for me. He looked at them all eagerly. You do all know my birthday is tomorrow, right? Of course, Naruto-kun. We could never forget that. Hinata said excitedly. He had a huge grin on his face. So you're all coming, right? Technically his birthday was on the 10th, but they always celebrated a day early. The 10th remained a day of mourning for his family as much as for the rest of Konoha. Naruto-kun, of course I'll be there. Hinata answered. Right, like I'd miss a party. Kiba grinned and Akamaru barked enthusiastically. Kakashi had whipped out his little orange book and was engrossed in it. Oh, is that tomorrow? Nissan. Naruto pouted. Let me just check and see if I have anything scheduled. XXXXXXXXXXX. Welcome home, Naruto-kun. His mom gave him a big hug as he walked in the door. Along with his mom, Alyssa, Seishu, and Haku were also there to greet him. The family's getting bigger. Naruto had a huge smile on his face. It's great to be home. Alyssa ran up to him and gave him a hug as soon as his mom let go. I missed you, Nissan. Well, I missed you too, Imouto. He reached down and playfully rubbed the top of her head. We have some wonderful news. Kushina said happily. Tsunade was able to treat Seishu. Uncle should make a full recovery. That's great. He went over and gave the man a hug. Grand uncle, I'm so glad you're better. The older man grinned peacefully. Thank you, Naruto, now I just hope we can finally get to know one another. He chuckled. How about a fishing trip tomorrow? We can go in the morning before the party. It can be my present to you. Naruto nodded excitedly. That would be great, grand uncle. He looked at his mom. So we are having a party tomorrow. She looked back in surprise. Well, of course we are, Naruto-kun. Do you think I would let you turn 13 without celebrating? He rubbed the back of his head. Well, I did just get back. I might not have made it back here by tomorrow. So, Kushina shook her head. Naruto-kun, if you hadn't been here we just would have held the party whenever you got back. It's not the actual day that matters, it's being with the people who love and care about you and celebrating another year of your life. He smiled and nodded. His mom had a way of really getting to what mattered. So since the mission is over now, can you tell us all about this S rank? Seeing you in such a good mood, I know it must have been successful. Yes, Naruto, Haku added. We have all been most curious. Oh well, I can definitely tell you now. His excitement was mounting. Me and my team just got back from killing Orochimaru. The three ninjas in the room stared at him silently. Alyssa was looking at all of them in confusion, wondering why all their mouths were hanging open. What? Kushina finally managed to squeak out. We killed Orochimaru. He said proudly. We snuck into his secret base and assassinated him. Kushina stared at her son. Naruto, she spoke carefully. Are you saying that the Hokage sent you and your team out to kill one of the Sannin and possibly the most dangerous ninja in the world? That's right. He suddenly gulped as he felt a massive killer intent coming off his mom. Mom, what? I'll kill Tsunade. It took about half an hour for everyone to finally convince her that killing the Hokage would be a bad thing. XXXXXXXXXX. The word leaked out surprisingly fast. Well before the official announcement was made, first to the council and then to the public, rumors were flying. People on the street were saying that the Hokage had avenged her teacher by killing the traitorous snake. Throughout the afternoon word and rumors spread, and as such stories tend to they changed as they went around the village. Tsunade had gone in secret and killed him. Kakashi had done it. Naruto, the demon of the leaf, had done it. A team had done it. A single ninja had. Orochimaru had died in his sleep. He had fought and the battle had destroyed the Sound Village. The rumors continued to spread until the official announcement was made. Kakashi was named as the one to deliver the death blow, but the Hokage made it a point to mention the other team members by name. Thus in her official proclamation she made sure that all the members of Team 7 would go down in the history books. With Orochimaru's death now confirmed, impromptu celebrations began. People literally danced in the street to know the man who had killed the third and caused the attack on their village had finally been punished. Small fireworks were lit off and there was laughter and shouting in the streets. From her office window Tsunade looked out at the village that was celebrating. "What a wonderful day," she said. "How about you let me take you out to celebrate it?" She turned from the window to look at her guest. "Is this another one of your lame attempts at getting a date?" "That depends," Jiraiya grinned. "If it is, will you finally say yes?" "No," he shrugged. "Well, in that case it's not." Despite herself she chuckled. "Well, since you just got back, can I assume it's for Naruto's birthday?" His good mood leaked out and Jiraiya took on a serious look. "Well, that's the main reason, but there's more to it." She sat down at her desk and motioned for him to have a seat as well. "The Akatsuki." He nodded. "I still don't know very much about them, but one thing is becoming clear. Kisame wasn't exaggerating about how powerful and driven they are. Their leader, this Pain character, I still don't know much, but it looks like he'd Sannin level, maybe higher." He had of course read all the information from Kisame's interrogation. Tsunade gaped. Jiraiya loved to tell a good story. But when it came to reconnaissance and information gathering he had always been accurate and on target. He would not make such a claim lightly. "As bad as that?" He nodded. "Hanzo is afraid of him." Tsunade slowly nodded. That said it all. Hanzo was the most powerful ninja and leader of Rain Country and had been the one to name her, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru the Sannin. They'd been the last survivors of a brutal battle and he easily could have slain them. But he had instead chosen to honor them for their ability to survive. If he was afraid, and this man wants Naruto? She asked quietly. Jiraiya nodded once more. He wants all the Biju and Jinchuriki, he's gathering their chakra, for what final purpose no one but him seems to know. I don't believe Naruto is in immediate danger as yet. But they will come for him at some point. From what I've gathered from their past history I expect Itachi will come after him again, but if he fails Pain may just decide to take a direct hand. I see, she leaned back and thought. As powerful as he is, he's still nowhere near Sannin level. He's approaching Kakashi, but I'd slaughter him, so would you, or the snaky bastard if he'd had working arms. She sighed. Kisame said he had 3 years at most. Jiraiya shrugged. That very well may be true, I have no way to confirm or deny it. He gave her a stern look. At some point in the not too distant future Naruto is going to have to face these men. He needs to become much stronger. I can't deny that. She eyed him warily. Why do I get the feeling you have something in mind? I want him to be my apprentice. Tsunade frowned, but did not immediately reject the idea. Kakashi might not like that, but there's no denying he could learn a lot from you. Do you plan on moving back into the estates? He had moved out of the Namikaze estates some months ago. Ironically enough, about the time that she moved into the Hokage mansion. But Jiraiya frowned at her. That's not quite what I have in mind. I mean to be a full-time teacher for him, not just when he's between missions. I also want to show him how to run a spy network and what different countries are like. I want to give him my full knowledge and experience. Minato was like a son to me and I think of that kid as a grandson and as an heir. I want to take him with me for 2.5 years on the road. Tsunade stared at him before giving him a firm answer. No. He frowned. Tsunade. That's Hokage-sama to you. He took a deep breath. She was going to be a hard ass about this. All right Hokage-sama, the fact is he'll learn more from me as a full-time apprentice than he will if he stays here going out on missions every few days. Oh, and I'll just bet that the very first thing you teach him is how to peek into a lady's bathhouse. I taught him that a long time ago. She snarled and leaned forward. What? He ignored her posture and crossed his arms. This was too important to be scared off. If you're worried about his morals, don't be, he gulped. I'll swear not to do any research for the whole time he's with me. She gawked at him. You are going to quit trying to look at naked girls. While he's with me, yes, I'm willing to do whatever is necessary to have him apprenticed to me. She sat back again and let most of her anger go. The pervert must have been really worried about her godson. I'm sorry Jiraiya, but the answer is still no. If you want to train him you can, but he stays in the village. She smiled. There are plenty of things that he'll learn by going on missions. There are, he agreed. But most of those lessons he already has and the rest won't save him when Itachi or Pain come for him. She frowned. That's what his teammates and fellow Leaf Nins are for. The last time Itachi came after him he was on his own. They got to him in time. He was lucky. Jiraiya said flatly. The next time he might not be as lucky. Oh, but you think he'll be safe with you? Just the two of you hundreds or thousands of miles away. As a matter of fact I do. I can protect him and if I have to I can make us disappear. You know how good I am at that when I want. He'll be much safer with me than being hundreds of miles away on missions. She frowned. The truth was he was safer with Jiraiya than with Kakashi and his squad mates. The problem was, I can't let you take him away for years. He's too important to this village. Besides me, his mother, Hinata, and too many others would miss him too much. Jiraiya quirked an eyebrow. You and others would miss him too much. Is this about making you and Kushina happy or about what's best for him? I don't believe this is best for him. What's best for him would be to stay right here and keep developing as a Jonin. Yes, right up until the Akatsuki decide to pay a visit. Tsunade shook her head. Even if I agreed with you, which I don't, you would never get Kushina to agree to this. He's an adult. I don't need her permission. Tsunade chuckled. Oh, you want to take her boy away for a couple years without her agreement? Go right ahead, I'll send flowers to your funeral. She gave him a stern look. And don't get any stupid ideas about kidnapping him if he agrees. I'll declare you a missing nin and I'll track you down myself. Well, so much for that idea. You aren't doing him a favor by denying him my help. Help him by all means, but he stays here. XXXXXXXXXX. Sasuke sat by his window and listened to the distant echoes of cheers and laughter. Every once in a while a skyride would explode and there would be more cheers drifting in on the wind. Fortunately the Uchiha compound had not followed the rest of the village into idiocy. Orochimaru's death was good news and well received, but Kakashi and Naruto were not beloved figures. Sasuke looked out into the night sky. The curse seal seemed unaffected. So long as he still had that additional power he would not shed a tear for Orochimaru. With him dead and Kabuto gone from the village life would be easier for him. He watched another sky rocket climb up into the darkness and exploded. He could hear the soft remnants of cheers carried on the wind. They really do love him, even knowing the truth. Fools. XXXXXXXXXX. Early the next morning Seishu had taken him to a small pond only about 5 miles from the walls of Konoha. Seishu supplied the rods, the bait, the tackle box and a bucket to hold what they caught. They didn't have a boat so the two of them simply walked out into the middle of the water and fished from there. Grand Uncle, how did you find this place? Seishu smiled. Oh, it wasn't hard, Naruto. There are plenty of places to fish around here. Fire Country is full of lakes and streams. I honestly can't believe Kuki never brought you here or somewhere like here to fish. Naruto stared at his grand uncle. Kuki. Seishu smiled. That was your mother's nickname growing up. She used to be a real tomboy, always trying to get attention and always wanting to fight with her brothers. She was a troublemaker and used to play pranks on everyone. Naruto stared at him. My mother did that. I don't believe you. Mom would never be like that. He spoke with conviction. Seishu laughed at the boy. Naruto, you forget, you've only known her as an adult and as a mother, of course. Near all my memories of her are as a child and a young adult. She was very different before meeting your father and having you. Naruto tried to imagine his mom pulling pranks or causing trouble. He couldn't imagine it. Grand uncle, do you have any stories about my mom when she was growing up? He laughed. Tons of them. Let me tell you about the time she got caught spray painting the statue of our clan's founder. You see, Naruto spent the next few hours listening to stories about his mom's hellion days and pulling in a few fish. My mother never did that. Seishu had a belly laugh, not just from the memory but from the look of horror on Naruto's face. Yes, she did. She gave him a chocolate bar that was really a laxative. Yes, and she did it right before he was supposed to go on a mission. Oh, Urusei was furious with her. Seishu checked his watch. He then looked at the bucket that was more than half full of fish. He nodded happily. Come on Naruto, time for us to get back. No way. I want to hear some more stories. Later, I promise, but you don't want to be late for your own birthday party, do you? XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto's 13th birthday party was the largest one yet. Along with inviting all his friends and former classmates, Kushina had also invited Gabriella and all of the Suna hostages to attend. This was mostly done for Alyssa's sake, as she could play with them without worrying what some parents might think. This also allowed Tamari to come with Shikamaru. When asked, they were not a couple, but they danced only with each other and were hardly ever apart. To Naruto, it reminded him of how he'd been with Hinata before their first kiss. Ino and Choji were also there, of course. Choji seemed to accept Tamari, though he lacked any enthusiasm. Ino deliberately refused to speak with the girl or with Shikamaru when she was standing next to him. Given what Ino had lost, Naruto had gotten permission from Hinata to have one dance with her. This seemed to make her happy without upsetting Hinata. Up until the end of the dance, when Ino had given him a light kiss on the cheek before he could react. Ino had then wisely fled before Hinata could strangle her. Gabriella was there and Naruto managed to make a little small talk with her. He thought she might be okay, despite her clan. But he was still a long way from trusting her. He noted that she and Haku seemed to spend a lot of time together. They also had 2 or 3 short dances together. Gabriella was the sole Uchiha present, as Sasuke was not there. Sakura wasn't present either, though Sino was. Jiraiya was back in the village and managed to pull him aside for just a few minutes. Naruto, I'd like to give you some extra training. That's great, pervy granddad. Naruto knew something was wrong when he frowned but didn't actually complain about his nickname. Naruto, I'm going to try and spend more time in the village than I'd originally planned. Whenever you and I are both in the village, I want you to spend as much time training with me as possible. I have a lot of things I need to teach you. He smiled. Sure, Jiraiya-sensei. If he was offering to give him all this additional training, Naruto decided he could be more polite. I'll be happy to train with you when I'm not on missions or training with my squad. For some reason that made the man frown. Naruto couldn't guess why. That'll have to do, he muttered, then planted a false smile on his face. Happy birthday, Naruto. Naruto had a lot of fun introducing his grand uncle to everyone and his Imouto to those who had not yet met her. The better part of the evening was spent dancing with Hinata. That was the highlight of the evening, surpassing even the presents or the cake. Being with her on the crowded dance floor made him very happy. Having so many people to celebrate with was also a joy to him. For once, Kakashi was not the last person to arrive. That honor went to his godmother. And as soon as she came in through the door, she had gathered up him, Kakashi, Kushina, and Jiraiya. She herded them all to the study so they could talk. XXXXXXXXXXX. Bone and ash. That was all that was left now. Kabuto sank to his knees in the blackened room. He stared at the charred remains of the most amazing man he'd ever met. He had once called Sasori master and pretended to have loyalty to the 3rd and 5th Hokages. But in his mind, only Lord Orochimaru had ever deserved his real loyalty. He reached out and took a handful of ashes. Orochimaru-sama, you were almost a god walking this earth. You had great power and wisdom. Truly you were deserving of the titles Sannin and Otokage. Men feared and obeyed you, and you were mighty. And what are you now? A handful of ash and a memory, nothing more. Had there been an actual body, he could have absorbed some of it into himself, perhaps saving a little of Orochimaru's legacy. But he could not absorb DNA from ash and scorched bone. He dumped the ashes back to the floor. He stood up and began to leave. The base had been abandoned. The moment it was confirmed that Orochimaru was dead, a power struggle had begun. 4 or 5 different sound ninjas were fighting it out to become Otokage. The sound village was descending into civil war. The greatness that Lord Orochimaru had created was being lost by petty small-minded men who just saw a prize to be won. He found such small-mindedness disgusting. He was leaving sound. Whoever wound up as the next Otokage was unimportant to him. With Orochimaru gone, he had no loyalty at all to the village hidden in the sound. The question was where to go to now. He could remain on his own and live as a missing nin. He was smart and strong enough to survive. But he liked being close to a source of great power. He nodded to himself, making a choice. Sasori still believed him to be his servant. He was blithely unaware that his mind control jutsu had been broken by Orochimaru. He would return to Sasori and the Akatsuki. But he would keep an eye out for things and follow his own path in time. XXXXXXXXXXX. What's going on, Tsunade? Kushina asked. Yes, Jiraiya looked at her suspiciously. What are you up to? She smiled. The reason I was late is because I was busy having a number of private one-on-one meetings with some of the leaders of the council. I wanted to sound them out about something, and happily with one exception they all agreed. Agreed to what? For some reason Jiraiya thought he wouldn't like it. She smiled at Naruto. I've brought you another wonderful birthday present, Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned. Well, whatever it is, it couldn't top the Shodai's necklace. Her excitement seemed to mount. Well, no, but it might come close. She swept him up into a hug. Do you remember when I gave you that necklace that I promised to help you reach your dream? Sure, godmother. Well, Naruto-kun, I've taken a very big step towards that. Sometime before this year ends, I am going to officially name you as my eventual successor. XXXXXXXXXXX. You wanted to see me, uncle? Sasuke asked as he stepped into Ryuki's study. Ryuki nodded wearily. Yes, I did, Sasuke. You know that though I am now clan head, that you remain heir. Despite my daughter's wonderful improvement, you remain the future of this clan. Sasuke nodded proudly. Of course, uncle, I appreciate how you went out of your way to assure me of that. Well, nephew, I just came home from a long and painful meeting with the Hokage. You should know the disaster which is now coming. Lady Tsunade intends to name Namikaze Naruto her successor, and I have no doubt the council will agree. But she can't do that. Naruto's a demon. If he becomes Hokage, then, the possibilities were too horrible to imagine. Then Konoha will be in dire danger. He let out a sigh. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do. But we have to stop this. Naruto cannot be allowed to rule this village. It is the will of the Hokage, and she has the support of the council, who now see him as a hero rather than a threat. That doesn't matter, Sasuke declared. We can stop him. Ryuki eyed him with worry. How exactly? Sasuke's voice dropped to a whisper. We can kill him. No, Ryuki said sharply. Absolutely not. He is the heir of the Namikaze clan and under the protection of the Hokage and the Hyuga clan. If we were to assassinate him, we would surely be found out, and that would mean a civil war. A civil war that would likely end in extermination. But, Sasuke, I forbid you to even mention this again. Do you understand? So we're going to do nothing. We're going to just sit back and wait for the apocalypse. Sasuke was angry and desperate. Was he really the only one who could see the village was doomed if Konoha fell into Naruto's hands? I never said that we would do nothing. We will not, however, take any rash actions that could destroy the clan. Even if she does name him and it is approved by the council, it will still be many years before she is ready to retire. In that time we will work on her and on the other council members to make them see reason. That will never work. She's his freaking godmother. She'll never change her mind, and once she has him installed as successor, the council will never have the guts to so offend the Hokage as to rescind her decree. It is still a better course of action than what you suggest. Well, it's certainly easier and safer. Enough, Sasuke. Ryuki shook his head wearily. I spent most of an hour arguing with Tsunade. I don't want to argue with you. I only told you this as I did not want you taken by surprise when it is announced. Now, please leave me, and remember I forbid you to mention your wish to anyone. He bowed formally. Yes, uncle. He left the study. As he went back home from his uncle's house, he had already made his decision. This has gone far enough. I will not just stand by as he comes just a step away from being Hokage. I'm going to kill you, Naruto, even if I have to die too. Chapter 50. It was October 10th, the 13th anniversary of the Cubus's defeat. This was also the day the Yondaime had died, Naruto had been born, and the Kyuubi had been implanted within him. And now, exactly 13 years later, this would be the day that the Kyuubi died. It was well before dawn. Sasuke was dressed and ready. He had made his choice. Really, he'd made it years ago and never once thought about changing it. Uchiha Sasuke was actually very intelligent and hard-working and quite deserving of the title, genius. Unfortunately, one thing he had never been was very introspective. He preferred to look out at the world and at others rather than inward. He saw himself as strong-willed and committed, not blindly stubborn. Once a choice was made, he stuck with it no matter what. He could never admit, even to himself, that he might be wrong. No, the great, the heroic, Uchiha Sasuke could never ever be wrong, because that would make him too human and ordinary. In his own eyes he was special, with a special duty that no one else could possibly carry out. He saw himself as a tragic but heroic figure, doomed to sacrifice himself for the greater good. He nodded, that felt right, he would do what he had to, no matter what. Well before the sun's arrival he leapt out of his window and hurried out of the Uchiha complex. Taped to the back of his door was a letter addressed to his mother. XXXXXXXXXXX. She heard a gentle rapping on her window. Slowly Sakura opened her eyes. She gasped to see there was a figure at her window and very nearly cried out. Instead she threw on a robe and opened up her bedroom window. Sasuke, what are you doing here? Do you know what time it is? Sakura, I need you. His voice was low but shaking with emotion. She saw more feeling in his face than she could ever remember. I need you to come with me right now. Now. But Sasuke, it's. He reached out and put his fingers to her lips, silencing her argument. Sakura, please, I need you. She stared at him, and slowly nodded. All right, give me a couple minutes to get dressed. Her parents would be angry with her, but if Sasuke-kun needed her she had to go. XXXXXXXXXXX. Dressed in her normal red and white outfit she accompanied her boyfriend to training ground 25. Today was a day of mourning, there would be no business or ninja training today. They were likely to be the only ones here for the rest of the day. As he had led her there he had not said a word. Something was definitely wrong, though knowing him she doubted he would ever admit it. They got to the training ground as the sky was just beginning to lighten. They came to a halt and Sasuke stood there looking at her. The sad and empty look in his eyes made her worry. Sasuke-kun, what's wrong? Approaching her he touched her cheek with a single hand. Sakura-chan, do you remember the dance at Ino's graduation party? Of course, who could ever forget Hinata knocking down Ino and making out with Naruto? He shut his eyes and shook his head. I was thinking about something else. Do you remember when I told you that when I finally kissed you it would mean I was ready to give you all of my heart? She felt her face blush and her heartbeat pick up. Yeah, I do remember that. Good. He leaned in slowly and his lips touched hers. After a long sweet moment he pulled them back again. I love you, Sakura, he whispered. There was no vermala, no outward excuse. A huge smile filled her face and she felt overwhelmed by the joy of finally hearing those words from him. Oh Sasuke-kun, I love you too. She leaned in and kissed him and he accepted her kiss and returned it. When the kiss ended he wrapped his arms around her and held her close. She could feel his heart pounding. I never meant to fall in love with you, Sakura-chan, it was never part of the plan, it just happened. I was thinking about who was closest to me and I realized that there was only you. You are the only one who I truly care for and the only one it would break my heart to lose. He held her a bit tighter. Sakura-chan, I need your help. She looked up at him and saw worry and fear in his eyes. He is worried about me. He really does care about me. Anything, Sasuke-kun. I would do anything for you. He swallowed and felt his hands shaking. She was so beautiful, and he really did love her. Are you sure, Sakura? Anything. Even give your life for me. She nodded without hesitation. I am Kunoichi and every time I go on a mission I am ready to risk my life for my village. I am just as ready to risk it for you, Sasuke-kun. I love you and would do anything you ask of me. He saw she really meant it and slowly nodded. He leaned down and kissed her again, a passionate desperate kiss. He let his feelings flow out of him into that kiss. He pulled his lips back from hers and whispered to her. Are you happy, Sakura-chan? Are you happy, my love? Yes, oh yes, Sasuke-kun, I have never been happier in my whole life. I'm glad I am able to give you this. He took a deep shuddering breath. Sakura-chan, close your eyes for just a minute please. She grinned up at him. Why? Please just trust me. She nodded and shut her eyes. I trust you, Sasuke-kun. He carefully pulled out of her embrace and walked behind her. He placed both hands gently on each side of her face. She could feel his hot breath on her throat. He leaned in and placed his lips by her ear. Goodbye. And with one swift strong motion he snapped her neck. Her body jerked and fell to the grass without a sound. He stood there and looked at what he had just done. He felt pain in his eyes, as though they were burning. He shut them and stumbled away. I had to. It was the only way. After a couple minutes the pain dies away and he opened his eyes. He pulled off his Ite and looked at his reflection in the polished metal. His Sharingan had drastically changed. He had done it, he had activated the Mangekyo Sharingan. XXXXXXXXXXX. They were all sitting down to breakfast when the phone rang. Kushina got up to answer it. Hello. She paused and listened. Yes, he is. She listened a bit more, then looked to her son and held the receiver out to him. Son, it's Morino Ibiki, he wishes to talk to you. Naruto got up from his seat and took the phone from his mom. He was wondering what the head of the ANBU's torture and interrogation unit could want with him. Hello, this is Naruto. He listened. Now. But, I see, no, that's fine, I'll be right over. He hung up. He looked at everyone. I have to go. Apparently they need my help to bring pressure on someone who was plotting to attack me. Kushina frowned. Damn it. Are there still idiots like that even now? Naruto grabbed an apple as he headed towards the door. I'll be back as soon as I can. Nisan, you're leaving? A slightly upset Alyssa asked. He has to, Seishu explained. A ninja must be ready to serve whenever his village needs him. Naruto smiled. Don't worry, Imouto, I'm sure I'll be back before too long. XXXXXXXXXXX. It was a bit unusual to receive requests for help directly from the ANBU, but hardly unheard of. It was a bit odd though that they were asking him to go to Training Ground 44 rather than ANBU headquarters. He wondered, and they were using the Forest of Death as a way to bring additional pressure on whoever it was they were interrogating. It was still early enough for the streets to be nearly empty. Naruto raced over the rooftops wanting to get there quickly and also quietly. Though many people might be surprised to know it, October 10th was a day of mourning for his family just as it was for a great many others. To his mind, October 9th was his birthday. October 10th was the anniversary of his father's death. He and his mother would make an offering in his memory in the family chapel. Later his mother would go to the cemetery and place a single rose upon his grave. Naruto did this on other days, but not on the 10th of October. He hoped that whatever his part was, it would be over quickly and he would soon be home again. No matter how things had changed, he would prefer for people to not really notice him on this day. XXXXXXXXXXX. Ibiki was alone waiting for him just outside the main entrance to Training Ground 44. Naruto landed about 20 yards away, facing him and eyeing him warily. Thank you for coming so promptly. We have some things to discuss. A gruff voice said. Naruto nodded. We sure do. Why don't you drop the hench first though, Sasuke? Ibiki looked at him and smirked before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Sasuke stood there in his normal dark blue jacket and khaki shorts. Naruto noticed his eyes were red. Not bad, Naruto, how'd you know? I can read your chakra signature. His hand drifted to his belt, but he did not press the send button on his radio communicator. If he called in his mom, the clans would automatically get involved. He didn't want to drag everybody into this if it was just another stupid challenge from Sasuke. The dark-haired boy nodded. I would have shown you who I was anyway, but it's good that you figured it out. This is the way it should be, Naruto, you and me face to face. I don't really want to ambush you, I want to beat you down in a straight fight. Naruto sighed. So is that what this is? One more stupid challenge. He shook his head. We're not academy students anymore, Sasuke. We're ninjas of Konohagakure. Don't you think it's time to put an end to childish fights? I couldn't agree with you more, Naruto. Let's bring all our fighting to final end, here and now. Well, that sounds a bit ominous. His finger switched his radio to send. So Sasuke, just why have you brought me here to the forest of death? Sasuke smiled. That won't help. Huh. From behind his back, Sasuke took out a device about the size of a brick with a couple of antennas sticking out of it. I have a short-range jammer. Your whore of a mother won't be saving you. Naruto glared at the boy and clenched his fists. Sasuke's smile widened as he felt a wave of killer intent coming at him. What did you just say, you Uchiha bastard? I said that filthy red-headed foreign whore isn't going to save you. You're going to die here, monster. I've read all the secret files on you. I know all about your red chakra and your healing ability and about all the people who protect you, including the Hokage. But none of that is going to save you. Against the power of my Sharingan you are helpless. I've faced the Sharingan before, Tem. I've sparred against Kakashi at least a dozen times while he was using it. He slowly and deliberately pulled out his katana. If you're serious about this, bastard, then I really will kill you, even with your Sharingan. You've never faced this power before. Sasuke sounded smug and secure. I don't have an ordinary Sharingan. What I possess is the Sharingan's final and ultimate form, the Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto snarled. I don't give a damn if it's the double super secret Sharingan. You've never been a match for me, Sasuke, and you never will be. Sasuke activated his curse seal and let all of its power flow into him. He was finally ready. If you really believe that monster, then come prove it. Thank you for watching. Please remember, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have fanfictions you would like to see on the channel, leave them in the comments, and have a great day.